Chapter 325. Lei Dongtian was sincere in his promise of absolutely not. To Lei Dongtian, the Tianxian continent, a mere country, was nothing in his eyes. Yin Yang sighed softly. His gaze was still a little unfocused as he pondered quietly again. This time, he was deliberating on his words. After a long time, he finally spoke. A few years ago, Tiantang City was suddenly bestowed with the 9 heavens domain, forming the residence of 9 supremes. This residence of 9 supremes requires 9 people of different cultivation attributes to enter the residence to learn the peerless cultivation method and become the 9 supremes. Yin Yang enunciated each word clearly. These things have long been circulating among the people. I believe Brother Lei has long known about it. Even if you don't know the truth, the reason for it is clear. However, I still have to start from here. Lei Dongtian said humbly, I understand. I'm very interested to know the entire story of this how. Yin Yang said, there was only 1 or 2 of the 9 supremes in the beginning. At that time, our country's external war had already been reversed because of their intervention. Later on, as the 9 supremes lords continued to appear, the 9 supremes were finally gathered. In terms of combat power, the empire of Yutong's army was already invincible. This also meant that Yutong's opportunity to conquer the world had appeared. Therefore, it finally attracted the joint forces of the 4 empires and 7 heroes to come for the war. They dared not let us continue to grow stronger. If they continued to wait, it would be equivalent to waiting for death. However, even when the 4 empires advanced together, the 7 heroes attacked together, and the 9 supremes lords fought on the battlefield, appearing and disappearing mysteriously, the 4 empires were still defeated and their efforts were futile. Yin Yang sucked in a deep breath. However, the total military power of the 4 empires and 7 heroes still far exceeded what Yutong could defend against. To put it in the simplest and most straightforward way, even if the lives of 5 of their warriors were exchanged for 1 of ours, as long as this war continues, the empire of Yutong would still be unable to sustain itself and its defeat would be inevitable. Even with the help of the 9 supremes lords, we can barely maintain the stability of the war and not lose an inch of land. However, it's absolutely impossible for us to continue expanding. Moreover, after many years of war, the strength of the nation and its people have long been extremely lacking. Fighting a war will always cost money. It's the same for our country. The other 4 countries and 7 heroes are also suffering. Their losses are even greater than our country's. It's just that they are cooperating with each other and supporting each other, not allowing any one of them to collapse. They are also able to hold on, causing both sides to fall into a stalemate and a dangerous balance. Finally, in the winter of the year before last, both sides stopped fighting. Everyone needs to recuperate. In fact, our country is also relieved by the armistice this time. Back then, my father had even sighed and said that as long as the empire of Yutong had 3 years to recuperate, the 9 supremes might would be enough to conquer the world and conquer Tianxian. At that time, we were all very happy, because this eternal war was finally over. Yin Yang's expression was solemn. However, in the 3rd month of last year, a war report suddenly came like a bolt from the blue. When the 9 supremes lords went out to carry out a secret mission, their whereabouts were inexplicably exposed. In the Battle of Tianxian Cliff, the entire army was annihilated and the 9 supremes were no more. When the news came back, the entire empire of Yutong was in a daze. It's just that this matter has dealt a huge blow to us. Lei Dongtian nodded and sighed as well. That's right. Everyone feels the same way. Putting ourselves in their shoes, such a blow isn't something an ordinary person can withstand. However, after a year, there was suddenly news that the 9 supremes lords had begun their revenge, targeting everyone who was involved in the plot against the 9 supremes. The news itself was secondary. The key was that this news also revealed another fact: there were still people alive among the 9 supremes lords. The nation was in jubilation then. Although only one of the 9 supremes lords reappeared, we don't know if he was the only one left. However, to all the citizens of the Empire of Yutong, it was no small matter. Everyone felt that they had seen hope, that Yutang wouldn't fall, that the nation wouldn't be annihilated. At that time, even though we didn't know which one of the 9 Supremes Lords was alive, everyone was hoping, praying, and wishing them well. It didn't matter who it was, as long as one of the 9 Supremes was still alive. At that time, even His Majesty the Emperor was very excited. The 9 Supremes' revenge pointed to the 4 Seasons Tower, and all the enemies pointed out by the 9 Supremes were strictly punished. During that time, as long as the 9 Supremes Lords said it, there was no need for evidence, no need for investigation, and the person could be convicted and punished. Yin Yang said seriously, "Brother Lei, you can imagine how much our country values our heroes." Lei Dongtian sighed. That's right. Although Lei Dongtian did not place much importance on worldly imperial power, to be able to worship someone to such an extent, to be so highly valued and even worshipped, even he could not help but be fascinated. However, the 9 Supremes Lords have never really shown up. The 9 Supremes Lords have only been carrying out their revenge operations, continuously finding out the spies lurking in Yutang. We, Yutang's officials, have been dealing with the aftermath. This situation has been going on for a year, until now. Yin Yang's expression was extremely solemn. However, until today, we were shocked to realize that everything seemed to have gone out of control. Out of control? Lei Dongtian raised his eyebrows. Yes, out of control. Yin Yang heaved a long sigh. It was at this time that the surviving 9 Supremes Lords appeared. Only then did everyone confirm that the only survivor of the 9 Supremes was Lord Supreme Wind. Since Lord Supreme Wind's reappearance, not only was his existence inspiring, the first thing he did after his reappearance was to help us defeat Dongxuan's army. Many things that happened after that made people feel that everything he did was beneficial to the country, that he spared no effort for the country and its people. Yin Yang sighed, therefore, we no longer had any doubts, that it was indeed Lord Supreme Wind. However, something huge happened in the dark, something that we've only confirmed recently. Yin Yang said worriedly, the forces that originally belonged to the 9 Supremes Lords, the subordinates of the so-called 9 Heavens Dictum, did not lose control due to the lack of a leader during the days when the 9 Supremes Lords went missing. They were always under the country's control and their actions were restrained. However, since Lord Supreme Wind returned, these men started to disappear gradually, leaving the country's control bit by bit. Eventually, their whereabouts were unknown. Yin Yang sighed deeply. Lei Dongtian's expression changed as well. How is this possible? A country's military force should always be under the country's control. How could it suddenly disappear? Lose control? Could it be that these people are all dead? They're not dead. Yin Yang chuckled bitterly. However, they're no longer contributing to the country. They're only serving this Lord Supreme Wind who's still alive. This is getting more and more interesting. Lei Dongtian smiled playfully. With his rich experience in Yin Yang's narration, he naturally knew the crux of the matter. Obviously, there was something wrong with the 9 Supreme Wind who was still alive. Perhaps, this was the other main reason why Yin Yang was willing to compromise, to accept his temptation and betray his country's secrets. While Lei Dongtian's interest was piqued, his suspicion towards Yin Yang had lowered a notch. Of course, it's a big deal for so many people to go missing. However, the momentum that Yutang's higher-ups have created for the 9 Supremes Lords has been built up. Not only has the 9 Supremes' prestige been restored, it's even greater than before. Yin Yang chuckled bitterly. Therefore, no matter how suspicious we are, we can only remain as suspicions. Lei Dongtian nodded and sighed, that's right. This matter is indeed confusing. It's hard to predict and even harder to take action. In the meantime, we can only observe and hope that everything is just a misunderstanding, or that Supreme Wind has other arrangements. However, not long ago, another major incident happened. Yin Yang's expression was extremely somber. This time, Lord Supreme Wind has gone up against Yutang's elder, the tutor of 3 generations of emperors, an old official of 4 dynasties, a master of literature, a scholar's grandmaster, and the leader of the literati, He Han Qing. Lei Dongtian beamed. I've heard of this before. I heard that this old Sir he is also, Yun Yang said faintly. This Lord Supreme Wind has said that our Lord He Han-Qing, who is almost 90 years old, is from the Four Seasons Tower. He has also said that Lord He is Supreme Lord Spring Frost, one of the four Supreme Lords who are the backbone of the Four Seasons Tower. Yin Yang wore a mocking expression on his face. How hilarious is this? Lei Dongtian said, but why did I hear that this Lord He is Supreme Lord Spring Frost himself? Yin Yang's expression was sorrowful. He did not speak for a long time, only speaking in a low voice after a long period of dejection. Brother Lei, you're not the only one who has this thought. I'm afraid the whole world knows that old Sir he is Supreme Lord Spring Frost. However, is what the world knows the truth? He sighed in grief and indignation. I wonder if Brother Lei knows that old Sir he is almost 90 years old this year. His face is covered with age spots that only an ordinary old man would have. In his lifetime, he has trained more than 10,000 talents for Yutong's civil administration. Lei Dongtian was moved. Any cultivator, even the most ordinary beginner of the peak realm, should have a lifespan of more than 100 years. It was impossible for him to have age spots like an ordinary person, unless that person was really an ordinary old man of 80 or 90 years old. Among all the high officials of Yutong's civil administration, 70% of them are old Sir He's disciples. Yin Yang emphasized each and every word. His Majesty's father is old Sir He's disciple. Even His Majesty himself has been taught by old Sir He, and His Highness the Crown Prince is also old Sir He's disciple. Old Sir He has given his all for Yutong in this lifetime. If he had even the slightest bit of malicious intent, he could have destroyed Yutong in an instant at any time. Yutong would have long ceased to exist in this world. Lei Dongtian's gaze was thoughtful. Then, this old Sir he is not from the Four Seasons Tower? Yin Yang's expression was one of extreme sadness, yet he did not want to speak. Lei Dongtian was shaken. If this was the case, then the conspiracy that Yutong was facing now was too terrifying. Chapter 326. However, old Sir he was still killed. Not only did the old man give his all for Yutong, he even died with his blood spilled. His loyalty was clear. Yin Yang lowered his head sadly, his eyes rimmed red. Lei Dongtian sighed as well, but he was calculating the credibility of this incident and the follow-up. If He Han-Qing was not from the Four Seasons Tower, then who was? Also, why did the other party go through so much trouble to create so much trouble? What was their real purpose? No matter what, it must not be a small matter. The battle that day was earth-shattering, it pained the hearts of Tiantang people. Yin Yang could not stop sighing. An old and loyal official of Yutong has died unjustly, just like that. Along with him, there were many Yutong's heroes who were renowned for their time. It's just that these righteous men who were reputed among the people were branded as villains who were lurking in other countries and wanted to commit treason after they died. After the incident, we kept reflecting. Connecting all the things that had happened during this period of time, we thought about what was going on. Yin Yang's voice was low. Then, we discovered a very terrifying thing. Lei Dongtian was completely immersed in the matter now, asking in high spirits, what is it? How terrifying. This matter is truly frightening to think about. Yin Yang's voice was low, his eyes glinting with hatred. Everyone knows that the Four Seasons Tower had gathered many experts to set up some kind of formation during the Battle of the Nine Supremes Lords at Tianshan Cliff. It could be said that the pinnacle experts of the martial world had gathered in that battle. Under such circumstances, the news that spread out can't be false. This means that the initial news of the Nine Supremes Lords being annihilated with no survivors is true. Think about it. Under such circumstances, with the meticulous setup of a super sect like the Four Seasons Tower, how could they have allowed anyone to escape? How could there be? Yin Yang asked. Lei Dongtian's gaze was heavy as he said, that's right. He thought about it and said, if I were the one who set up this trap, since I intended to kill all the Nine Supremes in one fell swoop. I wouldn't have left any survivors, I wouldn't have left any hidden threats. Not to mention the number of corpses, can't we count it by counting the number of corpses? How could such a huge loophole like a missing head appear in such a meticulous setup? Yin Yang said, what Brother Lei has mentioned is one of the doubts that we have been considering. Lei Dongtian said, this is a major factor that needs to be confirmed. If I were in charge of this matter, even if all the corpses were placed in front of me, I would still behead all of them. I would even grind the corpses into ashes to ensure that nothing goes wrong. Under the suppression of such absolute strength and the concealment ability of the heaven and earth formation, if one person were to escape, wouldn't that be a huge joke? That's impossible. That's impossible. Yin Yang heaved a deep sigh. This is the first suspicious point that we have discovered. Lei Dongtian then asked, since there is a first, there must be a second, right? The second suspicious point is the time. Yin Yang said, let's pretend that the first question doesn't exist. The Four Seasons Tower's leader has committed an illogical and impossible mistake. There are survivors in the Nine Supremes. But, this Lord Supreme Wind appeared a year ago. That is to say, after the incident at Tianshan Cliff, this Lord Supreme Wind has only reappeared after a full year to seek revenge. Yin Yang asked, then, where has he been for this entire year? Why didn't he return earlier? Even if it was just to send some news back. Even if no one else can be trusted, can't His Majesty the Emperor of Yutong be trusted? Could he have betrayed his own empire? Lei Dongtian clapped his hands and said, that's right. This is a suspicious point that is hard to explain. Yin Yang gritted his teeth and said, my cultivation base is limited and my knowledge is shallow. I don't understand what kind of injury would require a year of recuperation. Lei Dongtian thought to himself, indeed, my knowledge is shallow. There are plenty of injuries that require a year of recuperation. Yin Yang said, however, I do know something else. Lord Supreme Wind has a cultivation skill that can turn into a gale, and it's not difficult for him to kill an opponent of a higher level. However, his cultivation base isn't very high. It's not even as high as mine. The lower the cultivation base, the lower the cost of recovery. If he had really suffered such a serious injury, how could he have recovered in a year? Even with that kind of cultivation base, he wouldn't have suffered such a level of injury. I wonder if Brother Lei thinks that I'm right? Lei Dongtian agreed, you're absolutely right. Under normal circumstances, an ordinary martial artist would have died 17 or 18 times over for an injury that can't be recuperated in a year. This is another suspicious point. Therefore, the period of recuperation and recovery this year is getting stranger and stranger. Also, there's another question I had before. In this 1 year, even if he's recuperating, and we agree with this theory, but there's no news at all. This isn't right. Lei Dongtian followed his speculation instinctively. That's right. There's no news for a whole year. This can't be justified. Just like what you said, it can't be justified to not trust anyone, but not even the Emperor of Yutong. It's too much. Yin Yang snorted and said, even this can be explained. For example, he had to avoid the Four Seasons Tower's eyes and recuperate in an isolated place, so he couldn't send any news. However, you're carrying a blood feud with you. How can you be so calm? Lei Dongtian said, that's right. This is another suspicious point, one that stems from human nature. Supreme Wind has made a strong comeback and has done his utmost against the enemy, showing his true nature. It's indeed suspicious to say that he's been holding it in for a year. Yin Yang said, there's still a fourth suspicious point. It's the cultivation base. Supreme Wind's wind manifestation cultivation base. Yin Yang's words hit Lei Dongtian's sore spot. His main focus against Supreme Wind was Supreme Wind's wind manifestation skill. Now that he heard the relevant clue, he could not help feeling anxious and asked, how so? What's wrong? He exhaled and said, the origins of each of the 9 Supremes Lords are mysterious. We don't know where they come from or their background. Even their identity, name, or gender is unknown. Only their cultivation base is recorded. After all, the 9 Supremes Lords have always been the vanguard on the battlefield, beheading generals and capturing flags, displaying their brilliance. On the battlefield, it's taboo to hold back. Therefore, the cultivation base they've displayed should be their true cultivation base. The Empire of Yutong has recorded the cultivation base of the 9 Supremes Lords in detail. When Lord Supreme Wind went to Tianxian Cliff, his cultivation base was at the 4th level of the wind manifestation. However, when Lord Supreme Wind returned this time, the power he displayed was only at the 3rd level of the wind manifestation. A full level lower? Lei Dongtian's interest grew. This is very unusual. He enjoyed the process of unraveling the cocoon. He especially enjoyed the process. It was because it made him look exceptionally intelligent. Yin Yang chuckled bitterly and said, "It looks like Brother Lei has already guessed most of what I want to say. I really don't feel like saying it anymore." Lei Dongtian said excitedly, "Then let me continue on your behalf." Yin Yang looked at Lei Dongtian deeply and said in a low voice, "All right. Then I shall listen to Brother Lei's opinion on this matter. This Lord Supreme Wind carries a blood feud with him. It wasn't easy for him to escape, but he hasn't shown himself for a whole year. When he came out again, his cultivation base had dropped by a level. This is a very strange situation. Since there's such a blood feud and he's thinking of revenge day and night, why wouldn't he cultivate with all his might? Even if he didn't improve, how could he have dropped instead of rising?" Lei Dongtian was confident and pointed out the crux of the problem. "Brother Lei's words are exactly what we're thinking about." Yin Yang sighed. Also, if he's completely isolated himself from the world during the year of his disappearance, how could he have found the 4 Seasons Tower's people so precisely if he caused such a ruckus the moment he came out? Could it be that the 4 Seasons Tower's people have their identities written on their faces? This doesn't make sense either. Lei Dongtian was indeed the young lord of the Lei family. He had hit the nail on the head and hit the nail on the head. Yin Yang's eyes were filled with admiration as he said, "Brother Lei's wisdom really amazes me." The group of us gathered our thoughts and studied this matter over and over again for a long time before we came to this conclusion. Sigh. Lei Dongtian comforted him. "The main reason is that you don't even want to suspect, you don't want to. Actually, this is nothing. It really is nothing." Ha ha ha. Although he said this was nothing, he was already laughing, his pride evident. After all, the feeling of crushing others with one's intellect was simply too exhilarating. Lei Dongtian smiled reservedly and said, "It's just that when this Lord Supreme Wind made his appearance, it was as if he could predict the future. The moment he made his appearance, he pulled out the pieces continuously. Was there no mistake throughout?" Yin Yang corrected him, "Whether there's any mistake or not depends on the person, because the people he's pulled out were all executed before informing the authorities." Lei Dongtian clapped his hands and said, "That's right, this is even more suspicious. Didn't you just say that when he killed old he that day, there were many famous heroes that had been fighting him for a long time? This is already very clear. Furthermore, since he's back for revenge, his ultimate goal is still to contribute to the country. Why would he bring all of the 9 Heavens dictum subordinates away from the control of Yutong's higher-ups?" Lei Dongtian said, "This is obviously an attempt to break away from the system. It's a disrespectful act that deceives the emperor and his superiors. It can even be said to be proof of rebellion." Yin Yang could only sigh, "Exactly. This is also the conclusion we've reached." Yin Yang then continued, "Since this Lord Supreme Wind came back, his wind manifestation cultivation base has been improving by leaps and bounds. Not long ago, he could already turn into a tornado. This should be the cultivation base of the wind manifestation's 6th level." Yin Yang chuckled bitterly. "Supreme Wind has risen by 3 whole levels in less than a year's time." Lei Dongtian cut him off, "This is even more wrong. Has this fellow been eating sh*t for the past year? There's no movement for a year and he's even taking a step back. Instead, he's rising rapidly after his return. There's no such logic in this world's cultivation path. Yin Yang said, "Who says it isn't? Let me say a few words. Some people say that the updates these 2 days are slow. Personally, I think that the updates these 2 days are the hardest to write. These few chapters are the essence of this period. Therefore, I'm here to defend myself. Some say that a supporting character's IQ is too low and they'll be tricked easily. But honestly, if everyone had not read the book and understood it, I'm confident that anyone would be tricked by Yin Yang's words when they're faced with this. This is what I want to say." Chapter 327. Lei Dongtian asked, "Anything else?" "Of course." Yin Yang said, "After Lord Supreme Wind came back, or rather, after the battle against Old He, we were surprised to find out that not only did Lord Supreme Wind's wind manifestation cultivation base skyrocket, he became all-powerful. Not only is he proficient in the wind manifestation, but he also cultivates the cloud manifestation, fire manifestation, blood manifestation, and thunder manifestation. It's amazing, as if the 9 Supremes had joined hands." Lei Dongtian furrowed his brows. This time, even with his intelligence, he could not figure it out. The 9 Heavens Domain successor can only be chosen by a single physique. Yin Yang sighed. Yin Yang sighed and said, "Only when a single physique has reached a certain level can it be chosen by the 9 Heavens Domain. This has already been proven. Therefore, it is impossible for any one of us, the 9 Supremes Lords, to possess the cultivation skill of others." This was probably Yin Yang's half-truth and half-falsehood. However, there was no one else in this world who could know the truth of this matter other than him. Therefore, no matter how Yin Yang boasted, he would not have to worry that someone would see through him. What was more, this reason was a basic understanding that everyone in this world acknowledged deeply. That's right. The 9 Heavens Domain is so mystical. It's not just a single extraordinary physique. How can it be acknowledged? Brother Yun, it's wise of you to think of this. Lei Dongtian breathed in deeply. There's indeed a huge problem with this Lord Supreme Wind. There are a total of 9 suspicious points, then. Yin Yang said, "After our Yutong's higher-ups studied it for a long time, we've finally come to a terrifying conclusion. This Lord Supreme Wind is most probably fake." Lei Dongtian sighed as well, thinking to himself, "I've only heard half of it and I've already confirmed that this Supreme Wind is fake. You guys have actually studied it for such a long time. Even if the situation is compelling, there should be a limit. Besides, this Lord Supreme Wind is very likely to be from the 4 Seasons Tower, maybe even the 4 Seasons Tower's higher-ups." After the ambush, he obtained the 9 Supremes Lord's cultivation manuals, which is how he could combine the manifestation cultivation skills, Yin Yang said. "I thought of that a long time ago." Lei Dongtian thought disdainfully. As for the so-called treacherous officials of the 4 Seasons Tower that Lord Supreme Wind has uncovered, I'm afraid they're all Yutong's loyal warriors. Yin Yang closed his eyes in anguish. "Brother Lei, perhaps you can't understand how I feel." Lei Dongtian sighed again and again. "I can totally feel this feeling. I can empathize. It is indeed not a good feeling. It's more than uncomfortable." After confirming the refresh, everyone felt like dying. Yin Yang said, "According to my father, His Majesty fainted on the spot, vomiting blood." Sigh. Lei Dongtian sighed. He thought to himself, "If I had to say, it would be a great fortune for your country if such a muddle-headed king died of anger. The most serious thing is," Yin Yang continued, "everything that Lord Supreme Wind has done during this period of time, at least on the surface, has been done in the name of the Empire of Yutong. What makes us speechless and uncomfortable is that we've done the most appropriate and perfect cleanup work for each and every one of them." Even Lei Dongtian was in disbelief. How could the Imperial Court of Yutong be so stupid? It was truly a **king miracle. It was truly a sight to behold. Being toyed with by an entire nation for a year, they were still suffering in silence and were even going to continue to suffer. It's hard to back down now. If we were to reveal this secret, it would be equivalent to everyone in the imperial court of Yutong collectively slapping their own mouths, slapping them to death. What's more, once this layer of veil is revealed, the morale of the people and the military will vanish in an instant. Yin Yang was inexplicably sorrowful. Therefore, even though we know that he's a spy, we still have to continue supporting him, using his reputation to stabilize the people's hearts. Yin Yang looked at Lei Dongtian. Brother Lei, speaking of this matter, including His Majesty, everyone has a belly full of blood and tears. Lei Dongtian grinned. It would be a miracle if all of you did not have a belly full of blood and tears. This kind of privacy, Yin Yang wore a smile that looked like he was crying. How would we dare to speak of it? We can only swallow our grievances, afraid that the slightest bit of it will leak out. When that happens, the people's hearts will crumble, the military's morale will crumble, the empire will no longer be a nation. He looked at Lei Dongtian sincerely. Brother Lei, please understand. I really didn't mean to make things difficult for you just now. Lei Dongtian said sympathetically, I understand how you feel and I can empathize. If I were the one involved in this, I wouldn't speak of it so easily either. This matter is too embarrassing. It's an embarrassment to billions of people in the empire. If it were me, I wouldn't be able to afford to be embarrassed like this. Lei Dongtian sighed and said, Brother Yun, I understand you. It's not easy for all of you Yutong's higher-ups. Thank you, thank you. Yin Yang shook Lei Dongtian's hand excitedly. Brother Lei, long live your understanding. Now, Lord Supreme Wind, who has been making frequent movements, seems to have felt our alienation. Recently, he has disappeared from Tiantang City without a trace. Yin Yang said, we can't find his whereabouts at all now. No, perhaps I should say that ever since this Lord Supreme Wind reappeared, none of us have been able to find out where he is. This person is so meticulous and careful in his actions that it's infuriating and insane. I've never seen such a meticulous character. He looked at Lei Dongtian and said, since this person has taken away Brother Lei's fiancé, my suggestion is. Lei Dongtian's gaze shifted as he looked at Yin Yang seriously and asked, what suggestion? Does he know that this lady is your fiancé? Yin Yang asked. This. Lei Dongtian was suddenly at a loss for words. That's right, does he know? Perhaps, or perhaps, he did not know. Yin Yang rolled his eyes inwardly and continued to guide him, let's put it this way. Has that person seen Brother Lei's face? Lei Dongtian said, of course he has. We've met once that day. Although I didn't see his face due to his wind manifestation skill, he must have seen my face. Yin Yang said, if so, he only needs to ask your fiancé and he'll probably know your identity. Lei Dongtian said, of course, my fiancé knows my background. Yin Yang pondered and said, if so, he lifted his head and gritted his teeth, a cold glint shooting from his eyes. You only need to wait patiently. He will come to you. Lei Dongtian asked, why do you say so? Yin Yang said, although Brother Lei's fiancée is the most beautiful woman in the world and any man would be tempted, for someone like him, I think, he should not be lacking in women, am I right? Lei Dongtian smiled and said, of course, any cultivator who has achieved something will not be lacking in women. If so, he most likely has some ulterior motive for kidnapping your fiancé. Yin Yang said, as for whether this ulterior motive is with your fiancé or with you, we'll have to wait and see. No matter what, since he dares to kidnap someone right in front of you, at least it means that he is not afraid of you and has the confidence to do so. Since he is not afraid of you, even if his initial target was not you, I'm afraid it's inevitable that he will target you now. As the saying goes, one thing is dirty, two things are dirty. Other than being a great threat, Brother Lei's identity can also bring great benefits. It's not surprising that he would be tempted. Therefore, he will definitely come to you. As for what conditions he will ask for, it's hard to predict. Yin Yang said, anyway, as long as he doesn't reveal his true form, you can't hurt him. Not to mention that he has a hostage in his hand and a lot of bargaining chips. At least for now, he has the upper hand and is fearless. Listening to Yun Yang's analysis, Lei Dongtian thought that it was very reasonable. Yun Yang's brain was indeed very good. It seemed that calling him stupid was an unjust accusation. It was probably the officials of Yutong's imperial court who were stupid, the emperor of Yutong who was stupid, or perhaps they were too passive in their positions. One wrong step and everything else would go wrong. Sigh, if I were the emperor of Yutong, I'm afraid I wouldn't be much better off in such a situation. It's really too much of a dilemma. Other than that, I have to remind Brother Lei. Everyone is in a different position now, but the enemy of my enemy will always have a bit of kindness. Yin Yang said seriously, although Brother Lei and this old man's cultivation base is high and it's rare to find a worthy opponent in this world, I'm afraid Brother Lei still doesn't know what kind of existence the Four Seasons Tower is. Lei Dongtian said faintly, I don't care what kind of existence the Four Seasons Tower is, but it's a fact that they've touched my people. That won't do. Yin Yang said worriedly, Brother Lei, you come from a reclusive family and have your own strength of character, but listen to my advice. With the backing of your huge family and the ease with which flying mystical beasts can send messages, you can summon a large number of experts with just a letter. Why would he put his precious body in danger? The Four Seasons Tower is by no means an easy opponent. Yutong is still a powerful country in the world, but we're still being toyed around by them. Their strength is evident. What's more, perhaps the ability they've shown now is just the tip of the iceberg. I've heard countless legends about them, such as subduing the world by force, bathing the martial world in blood, confronting the world's unrivaled expert and not losing the upper hand, and so on. Brother Lei, you must be careful. What he meant was, if your family is so powerful, why don't you send more experts to annihilate the Four Seasons Tower? Chapter 328. Lei Dongtian chuckled bitterly and said, Brother Yun, I know what you're saying is for my sake and your words are sincere. The enemy of my enemy will always have a tinge of kindness and your words have won my heart. However, you have to think about it. If I were to summon too many experts, would he still dare to come? Yin Yang said, he can hide in the dark. It is better to be safe than sorry. Lei Dongtian pondered and said, Brother Yun, you don't have to persuade me anymore. I've made up my mind. Just the two of us alone are enough to turn the Four Seasons Tower upside down. At the very least, saving my fiancé will be a piece of cake. Yin Yang said worriedly, if so, I wish Brother Lei success and all your wishes come true. However, Brother Lei, if there's anything you need help with, don't be shy. Still, the enemy of my enemy will always have a tinge of kindness. Lei Dongtian smiled and said, I understand. If there's a need, I won't be shy with Brother Yun. Lei Dongtian's impression of Yun Yang had gone up a notch. In fact, Lei Dongtian had no intention of forming a friendship with Yun Yang from the beginning. Even if Yun Yang was not related to Ji Lingxi, their positions were different. Yun Yang's shallow ability was not even worthy of Lei Dongtian's attention, which had already determined Lei Dongtian's original intention. However, Yin Yang had always poked into Lei Dongtian's thoughts and thought for him in many ways. Even if it was because of the many benefits Lei Dongtian had given him and the relationship of the enemy's enemy, Yun Yang's concern was still genuine. Of course, Lei Dongtian would not be completely untouched. Therefore, his tone of conversation with Yun Yang had gradually turned into one that came from the bottom of his heart. This had once again proven the level of a certain someone's acting skills. It was truly vivid and penetrating. One could not help but admire him. Yin Yang nodded, but he still seemed to be worried. He pondered for a moment and said, Brother Lei, why don't you and your family stay at my house? We can take care of each other. This is the residence of Marquis after all. No matter what, that fellow is still carrying Lord Supreme Wind's name. He won't be too harsh on us. Lei Dongtian smiled and said proudly, Brother Yun, are you trying to protect me? Yin Yang replied, what are you talking about, Brother Lei? This is just an expedient measure, Lei Dongtian said, Brother Yun, I understand your good intentions. However, with my cultivation, if I still need you to protect me, then I really won't have the face to see anyone. Yin Yang kept quiet for a while and said, if so, Brother Lei, please choose a place not far from me to stay temporarily. I will always be worried. Brother Lei, there are so many of us, yet we've still been fooled by a single person until now. This person is truly resourceful and full of schemes. It's impossible to guard against his crafty schemes. Even if Brother Lei's martial prowess is outstanding and you're not afraid of the enemy's attack, but if they use strange methods, can Brother Lei really handle it? Why don't Brother Lei stay in the inn opposite my house? Although it's not a top-notch inn, the best inns in the city are too far away from the residence of Yun. If anything happens, I'm afraid I won't be able to help. If Brother Lei were to live across from me and something really happened, would be the host after all. It would be much more convenient for me to deal with human affairs than Brother Lei. If necessary, I could even give Brother Lei some advice. Yin Yang said sincerely, Brother Lei, when you're outside, don't be stubborn. Lei Dongtian saw that Yin Yang's sincerity was all for his sake and felt touched. He said, if so, both of us will stay in the inn diagonally opposite. Thank you, Brother Yun. Yin Yang smiled and said, it's rare to have such a good friend like Brother Lei. You're so skilled, your family background is even better and your character is so good. Of course, this young brother wants to get closer to Brother Lei. He smiled shyly and said, speaking of which, I was greedy just now. I feel very guilty now. Actually, Brother Lei can just give me some. This young brother was too greedy just now. As he spoke, he took off the ring and said, Brother Lei, please keep these treasures. This young brother is really ashamed to accept them. Initially, Lei Dongtian's plan was to wait for Yun Yang to finish talking. He would take these things back if he said so. Do you have the ability to not return them? However, now that they were having such a pleasant conversation, Yun Yang was so considerate of him. How could he really take them back? Moreover, he was going to stay here for a period of time and had to rely on Yun Yang for many things. After all, only Yun Yang could find such a peerless secret in this place. Look for someone else? Should he look for the emperor or the prince? Not to mention whether the other person would be helpful or not, it would be troublesome to reconnect with them and he would have to give them some benefits. Instead of that, it was better to hand Yun Yang over. Even if he were to take them back, it would be after the matter was settled. He could not do it now anyway. What are you talking about, Brother Yun? Lei Dongtian frowned and said unhappily, Brother, what kind of person do you think I am? Just as Yun Yang was about to speak, Lei Dongtian had already stopped him and said, could it be that in Brother Yun's eyes, this elder brother is someone who doesn't believe in his words and has no eloquence? Yun Yang smiled awkwardly. Well, Lei Dongtian said heartily, Brother, to be honest, I do have a lot of these things. If Brother Yun needs them, I'll bring some for you every time I come in the future. Outside the door. The corners of the black-robed elder's lips twitched. You have a lot? You bring some every time you come? Young lord, you really know how to brag. A storage ring like this would fetch a sky-high price even in the bound of universe. I've only gotten this one after living for so long. I actually have so many of them that I can give one every time I send a gift. You've given my things away and you're still bragging here. I wonder if this old man can make up for it when I go back. Sigh. Yin Yang and Lei Dongtian had a pleasant conversation. The more they talked, the more congenial they became. Both of them felt that they were in love and almost became sworn brothers. Lei Dongtian had wanted to reveal Ji Lingxi's secret and tell Yun Yang that this was the girl he liked. However, after seeing Yun Yang's reaction, he had long suppressed this initial thought. No matter how he looked at it now, he felt that Yun Yang was an honest person who cared for him wholeheartedly. It was not nice to use such a trick, not to mention that they still had to work together during this period of time. The follow-up would have to wait until the end of the collaboration. Looking at Yun Yang's sincere gaze, he could not help but sigh in guilt. Sigh, I still have to kill such a person when I leave and snatch these things back. It's a little apologetic and uncomfortable. That night, Yin Yang and Lei Dongtian drank to their heart's content and talked about everything under the sun. They talked about poetry, chess, calligraphy, and painting, all sorts of things. Both of them were in high spirits as they talked. Yin Yang took advantage of Lei Dongtian's good mood to ask for a few healing medicinal pills for Dong Tianlang and Old Pang. Brother Lei, although those two people have offended you, but I know what you mean. Ha ha ha. Here are a few pills. Take them and give them one each. You don't need the rest. Brother, you can keep them. I have plenty of these things. It's really not a problem. Huh, the black-robed elder drank cup after cup of wine. He was bewildered. Back in the Xianhuang world, our young master was one of the most infamous little devils. Everything he did was based on his mood, and he would kill anyone at the slightest disagreement. How did he end up making friends here? The way things unfolded was too strange. Was this a twist of fate or a change of heart? While Yin Yang and Lei Dongtian were drinking, Lei Dongtian and Yin Yang had been drinking. The snow was still falling. In the midst of the heavy snow, the saber light flashed. Two ordinary-looking people who seemed to be traveling merchants appeared at the south gate of Tiantang City. The saber is here, right? Yes, it is. Let's go in. All right. That night, Lei Dongtian and the black-robed elder returned to the inn. Young lord, aren't you being too generous to Yun Yang? The black-robed elder was still feeling melancholic. Lei Dongtian said faintly, I have my own considerations regarding this matter. Old Mu, what you're most upset about and concerned about is that I've given him your storage ring, am I right? The black-robed elder, Old Mu's expression darkened. He lowered his head and said, this old servant has no such thoughts. Everything this old servant has is given by the main family. How can I have any resentment? Lei Dongtian stared at him coldly. After a while, he said, after we return this time, I will order the housekeeper to compensate you with a storage ring. I will not let you suffer any losses. Sigh, Old Mu, do you know that your biggest weakness is, you are too calculative about small gains and pay too much attention to the current gains and losses? No, I should say that you're too serious. Why can't you look further? Old Mu paled. Yes, this old servant accepts young lord's teachings. Not to mention that you've been in my family for so many years, you've followed me for at least 6 years, haven't you? Lei Dongtian said faintly, you have the ability and cultivation base, you have the knowledge and experience, and you have the brains to scheme. You're the best choice and the best in every aspect. If you can change this shortcoming of seeking revenge for the smallest grievance and being narrow-minded, you'll be my first choice after I become the family head in the future. Old Mu's breathing quickened and his eyes glowed with surprise. Lei Dongtian was the first-in-line successor to the Lei family. It was a fact that his status and identity were set in stone. The weight of his words could be said to be sufficient, there was no need to doubt it. Young lord, I'll definitely change. Old Mu was determined. He must be open-minded in the future. He must be open-minded and heroic in body and mind. He must change his shortcoming and be magnanimous. After giving Old Mu a taste of his own medicine, Lei Dongtian nodded in satisfaction at Old Mu's reaction and said, Old Mu, do you think that Yun Yang can become another cultivation cauldron for my 7 emotions? Chapter 329. Old Mu was a little dumbfounded when he heard the question. After a while, he said, Young lord, please forgive this old servant for wanting to spoil your mood. Yin Yang's looks are indeed outstanding and his innate talent is that of the golden jade physique, which is rather rare. However, he is not suitable to be plucked, especially when young master has never had a liking for men. How could he be tempted by this child? If this is the case, this child cannot be left alive. This old servant will get rid of him later. Young master, please don't be impulsive. It was Lei Dongtian's turn to be dumbfounded. He looked at Old Mu with his mouth agape, almost spitting out a mouthful of blood. He only spoke again after the time it took to drink a cup of tea. His tone was filled with melancholy. "Old Mu, what are you thinking? I said that I want Yin Yang to be my cultivation vessel, but I didn't say that I want to use those dirty tricks. My Art of Thousand Hammers 7 Emotions Devastation has only passed 2 stages so far. The candidates for the 3rd stage are Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan, and they are already in the game now. However, the candidate for the 4th stage is still being searched. I'm thinking of Yin Yang." Lei Dongtian murmured, "Is it possible?" Old Mu heard Lei Dongtian's intention and knew that he was thinking in the wrong direction. He smiled sheepishly and said, "I was thinking in the wrong direction." Lei Dongtian rolled his eyes. Old Mu sat quietly and listened, not daring to speak again. After all, he was just a servant. He only had a smattering of knowledge about Lei Dongtian's cultivation method from his usual behavior. He was completely clueless about the specific situation. Otherwise, he would not have thought that Lei Dongtian had been bewitched by Yun Yang and had developed an ulterior motive. In fact, Lei Dongtian would not let him know the secret of his cultivation method. Joy, anger, worry, thought, sorrow, fear, shock. Lei Dongtian calculated carefully in his heart, "I've completed the joy, the worry has been reversed. As long as Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan are completely in the game, they can help me complete the fear. However, the anger and sadness that follow after that have yet to be taken care of. If Yin Yang can be used, perhaps he can be cultivated to be the carrier of anger. However, this state of anger needs to be broken down due to anger. Only when one's mind is in chaos will it be effective. I'm afraid I'll have to put in more effort during this process." Lei Dongtian frowned and pondered. After a while, he shook his head in frustration and said, "Old Mu, do you think that what Yun Yang said is true?" Old Mu thought for a long time with a frown and said cautiously, "Young lord, if you ask me, what Yun Yang has said is impossible to be false. There are too many pieces of evidence that can be investigated. Any one of them can prove that Yun Yang's words are false, but it's also because of this that it proves that everything he said is true." Lei Dongtian nodded with satisfaction. For example, the time when the 9 Supremes met with mishap and when Supreme Wind appeared again. First, Supreme Wind's cultivation base before and after the incident. Second, the rapid growth of his cultivation base and the difference in power each time he appeared can be investigated in detail. Third, after Supreme Wind appeared, the people he captured and whether or not he handed over their whereabouts to the authorities are all obvious. Fourth, He Hunching's identity can't be concealed anymore. Fifth, Old Moose said, these are all obvious examples. They can't be faked by humans. We only need to go through them once and we can prove whether Yun Yang's words are true or not. Lei Dongtian said, then from tomorrow onwards, go and investigate all of these. Although Yun Yang's words are highly credible, it's better to be certain in your heart just in case. Yes, this old servant understands. After the investigation, if there's no mistake, I'm prepared to befriend this young Master Yun. A mysterious smile hung on Lei Dongtian's face. Old Mu asked in surprise, young master, are you planning to carry it out at the same time? It's better to be prepared than to bury the line when the time comes. Lei Dongtian nodded. First, befriend him wholeheartedly and become his best friend. Take care of him meticulously, treat him with sincerity, and stick by his side in life and death. Finally, there's an extreme reversal at a critical moment. Once he's hurt by love, he'll be enraged and will no longer believe in friendship and brotherly love. In the end, his primordial yang energy will be scattered and he'll be lost. Then, he'll become a part of my 7 emotions praxis. Old Mu said worriedly, however, the process will still be difficult. After all, young lord needs to make a sincere effort in the early stage. The biggest taboo of this 7 emotions praxis is the setbacks in the cultivation journey. Once the cultivator loses control of his emotions, he'll trigger the demon in his heart to devour him. Although Yin Yang's ability is weak, he has quite a background in the empire of Yutong and his influence is considerable. He may not be a good choice. No, yin-yang is the best choice. Those who have cultivated the 7 emotions praxis will have their emotions sublimated to perfection, the ultimate state of not being affected by love. The process requires the cultivator to go through the trials of love and be hurt. If I'm not hurt myself, it'll be difficult for this art to be perfected. Only when both parties are in opposition and he's hurt as well, stacking the wounds, can this art be accomplished. It's like 2 tigers fighting, survival of the fittest. The winner will devour the loser and own everything. You'll have to reach the ultimate state of not being affected by love. Is it so easy to cultivate the magical power to control the 7 emotions of everyone in the world? Lei Dongtian said faintly, when the time comes, even a strong cultivator whose cultivation base is far higher than mine will be impacted by the hurt of love when facing the 7 emotions praxis. There's no way to defend against it. This is truly an invincible cultivation method. Old Mu was at a loss when he heard it. It was obvious that he could not imagine the future of this cultivation method. Lei Dongtian, on the other hand, was in high spirits as he said with a smile, "You don't understand. Some states can only be reached by those who are loyal to their emotions, or those who are extremely dedicated, or those who are extremely crazy and fanatical. And such a person usually hides or holds onto a true feeling in his heart." Lei Dongtian said faintly, "As for my 7 emotions praxis, it can erase the true love in his heart in an instant. Therefore, no matter how invincible the expert is, he can only extend his neck to be chopped off when he faces me. As for the prerequisite to activate it, there's actually only one. Find out which love he cares about." Lei Dongtian said faintly, "Go to sleep." Old Mu agreed and went to the room next door to rest. Lei Dongtian ordered Old Mu to rest, but he did not rest in peace. Instead, he took out the portraits of Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan and hung them by his bed. His gaze was fixated on the portraits of the 2 ladies, his eyes filled with inextricable affection as he murmured, "Perhaps you don't know how much I like you. I like you like a madman. I want you like a madman, but I can't. I have to destroy you and erase this love completely. Do you know the extreme agony in my heart?" In the portrait, the 4 cold gazes of the 2 ladies were like 4 sharp arrows that shot towards him. Only when the body is free and safe, but the psyche collapses under extreme fear and despair, can I obtain the primordial ean of chaos and complete a part of my 7 emotions praxis. But how do you know the extent of my agony? His eyes were filled with passion and infatuation, but there was also a kind of extreme madness in them. "When I'm done with my cultivation, you'll all be dead. But from then on, I'll have to remember you all forever. Do you know, this is also a kind of torture for me. At least, before I reach the state where I won't fall in love, you'll haunt me like a nightmare. But everything is for the sake of invincibility. It's worth it. Do you understand? Do you understand? Your sacrifice will create an invincible expert. I'm sure you'll feel gratified." He murmured madly, his voice extremely low. However, it was still audible. It was as if he himself had suppressed his twisted mentality to the extreme, and now it had exploded out. He had to spit it out. Outside the window. Chapter 330. Sigh. A silhouette floated in. Has that fellow left? The visitor was none other than Ji Lingxi, holding a big red apple in her hand. Yin Yang frowned. "Lingxi, you silly girl, let me tell you, a lady must knock before entering someone else's door in the future. There's no exception here. You must cultivate this habit. Otherwise, how are you going to behave in the future?" Ji Lingxi frowned. "Yin Yang, what do you mean? Can you not use such a tone? I'm not your daughter nor your younger sister. Can you not always put on the airs of an elder in front of me? Can I? I'm begging you, okay?" Yin Yang sighed helplessly. "All right then," he raised his head and said seriously, "Lady Ji, how do you do? Please, when you enter my door or someone else's door in the future, you must first." Before Yin Yang could finish his words, Ji Lingxi had already turned to leave. The young lady was trembling with rage. She bit off half of the apple in her hand, even the core, and chewed it with all her might. This blockhead. Serves you right to be a bachelor for the rest of your life. Not long after Ji Lingxi left, Yun Yang's door was knocked on. Come in. Yin Yang called out. Young Master Yun, are you busy? Yu Rulan walked in. Yin Yang stood up quickly and said respectfully, Sister Lan, you're here. Please, take a seat. Behind Yu Rulan, Ji Lingxi watched with a pout as Yun Yang welcomed Yu Rulan in politely and respectfully. He even personally placed a stool down for Yu Rulan and looked at Ji Lingxi. Oh, Lingxi is here too. Find a place to sit. Ji Lingxi wanted to turn and leave at once. Was the difference in treatment too obvious? Was there such a big difference in our appearances? Was she that young? Was Sister Lan that old? Didn't the two of you argue again when Lingxi came just now? Yu Rulan asked as if she was having a headache. She truly did not understand why Yun Yang was like this. No matter what, he doted on Ji Lingxi and followed her lead. However, this doting was the complete doting of an elder and had nothing to do with the relationship between a man and a woman. It was like a pair of parallel lines that would never intersect. What was going on? Also, I'm Lingxi's sister. We're just sisters and I'm not anyone to you. Is there a need to treat me with such respect? What did she mean by treating him like an elder? I'm only 1 or 2 years older than Lingxi. Yin Yang smiled and said, nothing much just now. I was just telling Lingxi to knock first when entering someone else's room, just like Sister Lan did just now. Sister Lan and Lingxi should call me Cousin Brother Yun or Cousin Brother Yun when they meet me in the future. Even if it's a more private meeting or when it's just the three of us, we have to maintain this form of address. Right now, our greatest enemy is in the inn not far from us. Their cultivation is too high, so high that it's beyond our understanding. We must be careful. Even if they are far away, it's not certain that they won't be able to hear our conversation. We only need to hear one sentence from a conversation like tonight's, and we're all done for. Yin Yang said seriously, Sister Lan, you understand. We don't have any power to fight them now, so we have to get used to the new way of getting along and acknowledge it from the bottom of our hearts. Yu Rulan answered readily, Cousin Brother Yun is right. We really have to get used to it. Yin Yang looked at Ji Lingxi, obviously not trusting the latter's temperament. Not only was Ji Lingxi unable to vent her anger, it was getting more and more intense. She bit her lips and only said after a long time, feeling wronged, Cousin Brother Yun is right. Good girl. Yin Yang looked comforted. However, the compliment almost made Ji Lingxi lose her mind from her anger. She sat on the edge of the bed, almost collapsing Yun Yang's bed. Raising her hand, there was a green cucumber in her hand. She bit down viciously, her cheeks puffed up as she chewed furiously, her eyes glinting fiercely at Yun Yang. It was as if the cucumber was Yun Yang, or perhaps it was Yun Yang's flesh that young Mistress Ji wanted to chew into pieces. What's the background of these two people? Yu Rulan frowned and asked, Cousin Brother Yun, have you found out anything? Yin Yang sorted out his thoughts and said, this Lei family's young lord is most likely from another realm, or a mysterious place called the Bound of Universe. Yu Rulan and Ji Lingxi's eyes froze. Bound of Universe? Someone from the upper realm? Coming from renowned aristocratic families, they were no strangers to the term upper realm. Although they did not know what level the Bound of Universe was or what kind of realm it was, they knew that it was not a simple place. At least, it was far above the Tianxian continent. Silence. Yin Yang said, the reason why he's looking for trouble with you is probably to use you to complete a stage of his cultivation method. I didn't hear clearly what cultivation method it is and what it's about. But it's probably related to the 7 emotions. According to my speculation, the cultivation method should be an extremely evil one, but once it's cultivated, it'll be a mystical cultivation method with boundless power. Yin Yang analyzed carefully, using the 7 emotions of life as the cultivation goal. It should be to fall in love, then leave it, break it and destroy it. Even to the point of being merciless, heartless, and so on. Finally, this extremely evil and inhumane cultivation method is achieved. Yin-Yang sighed. I don't know what you all think, but the degree of evil in this cultivation method can be considered the most extreme cultivation method I've ever seen in my life. There's no other. Yu Rulan and Ji Lingxi were both born in noble families, so they were knowledgeable people. Hearing Yun Yang's words, they felt their scalps tingle. Yu Rulan paled and said, You mean, that person is using both of us as cauldrons? Using us to perfect his cultivation method? Yin Yang nodded. That should be the case. Otherwise, there's no way to explain his previous actions. Yu Rulan and Ji Lingxi's expressions grew darker, extremely unpleasant. Cauldrons. These two words were the two words that all women in this world who knew the true meaning of these two words hated the most. Such an action was also an action that all women hated the most. He's been chasing us without killing us or capturing us. He's been torturing us continuously. Is this also part of his cultivation method? Ji Lingxi asked. Most likely. Yin Yang said, I eavesdropped on their conversation just now. There seemed to be a line about, only when the body is free and safe but the psyche can't withstand the extreme fear and despair can I obtain the primordial Yin of chaos and complete a part of my 7 emotions praxis. What does it mean? Ji Lingxi asked. Yu Rulan sighed. What else could it mean? It's nothing more than to let us be in an environment of freedom and not be controlled. He then exerted pressure until our psyche is naturally crushed by the pressure. Even the primordial Yin belonging to a lady of primordial Yin will be messed up along with the mental breakdown. This is the perfect time for him to strike. If it weren't for Cousin Yun's timely appearance, we might have really fallen into his hands. Yu Rulan blushed as she spoke, gritting her teeth. It was no wonder. At that time, the two of them were almost on the verge of giving up when they were being hunted down. When they even had the will to die, the other party would immediately slow down to give them a buffer and a chance to rest. When they were about to give up, the other party would change his strategy and start targeting their appearances. Whether it was then or now, it was obvious that the other party wanted to keep tormenting the two girls until they went insane. Ji Lingxi said with a dark expression, Don't tell me that both our families don't know about this? The pursuit has been going on for such a long time, it's been 2.5 months. Yu Rulan's gaze dimmed as she said softly, Lingxi, why are you still thinking about your family's help even now? This is the fate of the daughters of our noble families. From birth, our fate has long been decided. In the first 10 to 20 years, we had the glory of being a young lady, we could have anything we wanted. However, when we grow up, it's time for us to pay the price for everything we've enjoyed all these years. If the family needs to maintain its current strength through marriage, they'll sacrifice our bodies in exchange. If the family has offended someone they shouldn't and needs a buffer, they'll use our bodies to exchange and mediate. If the family wants to advance and become stronger, they'll still use our bodies in exchange. All in all, as long as the family needs it, the meaning of our existence is to wait for the right price to be sold, to be used in times of need. Yu Rulan said softly, why would our personal wishes be cared about? Those who achieve great things don't bother with trifles. Our wishes aren't even considered trifles, they're merely insignificant. After I understood this, I've long given up on all beautiful dreams. Sometimes, I feel like I'm a high-class prostitute, flaunting my extraordinariness and uniqueness. Deep down, I'm just raising my price and waiting for a suitable price. Compared to the girls from humble families, we so-called young ladies of noble families are perhaps even more pitiful. Ordinary well-off families or even poor families still have kinship, but for us, it's an extravagant hope, an unattainable extravagant hope. Yu Rulan's voice was low, her words clear, but the resentment that flowed between the lines was like a surging volcano that was about to erupt. Even if we're engaged and we've found someone, we can still go back on our word when the family faces a greater temptation, we can still. Chapter 331. Yu Rulan's situation was different from Ji Lingxi's, Ji Lingxi was an adopted daughter of the Ji family. Moreover, he had known about this matter since he was young. Normally, he wasn't happy at home. Being treated like this, although he was a little angry, he didn't have any more dissatisfaction. After all, there were many years of gratitude for raising him. Yu Rulan, on the other hand, was the legitimate daughter of the Yu clan. She had grown up in the Yu clan like the apple of their eye since she was young. She would never have thought that she would fall into such an unbearable situation, sacrificing herself in the face of temptation. This kind of grievance was hard to describe. Speaking of which, if she had not promised to marry Ji Lingfeng, Yu Rulan's reaction would not have been so drastic. At most, she would have prayed that her lifelong partner would not be too bad. However, the reality was that Yu Rulan had been betrothed to Ji Lingfeng for many years. Yu Rulan had long regarded herself as the daughter-in-law of the Ji family and Ji Lingfeng's wife. Yet, the family had promised someone else without her knowledge and without informing her at all. This reality made Yu Rulan feel an unprecedented sense of shame. This kind of shame was as if she had cheated on her husband. In short, it was hard to describe. What's more, that person was also drooling over her missing husband's only sister. This kind of humiliation could no longer be described with words. It was hard to describe, hard to write, and indescribable. Yin Yang's expression was dark as well. After a while, he said softly, "Don't worry, cousin sister and cousin sister. As long as I, Yin Yang, am still breathing, I will never allow such a thing to happen to you." Ji Lingxi's eyes shone as she looked at Yin Yang, her gaze filled with affection once more. This domineering tone, this declaration of protection. Ji Lingxi's heart, which had been drifting helplessly, was suddenly filled with a sense of security. Even when she was with her brother, it wasn't this obvious and intense. "But remember, both of you, today is the last time we speak as if we're not cousins." Yin Yang reminded them again, "As long as this is done, you don't have to worry about anything else. Leave everything to me." "Yes, cousin brother." Unexpectedly, Ji Lingxi was the first to respond to Yin Yang. The girl's eyes were gleaming. Although she was in disguise and her face was not at all attractive, the glimmer in her eyes still made Yin Yang's heart flutter. Subconsciously, Yin Yang averted his gaze and extinguished the stray thoughts in his mind. He thought to himself that he would find a young talent to marry Ji Lingxi off as soon as this matter was settled. Eighth brother was gone, so his sister's marriage would naturally be handled by him. He still had to fight against the Four Seasons Tower for a long time to avenge his brothers, and his life would be in danger at any time. Not a good man. The next day, Lei Dongtian ran over again and continued to chat with Yin Yang. Even when Yin Yang was teaching the mystical beasts, Lei Dongtian was watching with interest, not knowing how to avoid arousing suspicion. The members of the four great clans, who were supposed to be the most qualified to speak, were now as silent as cicadas in winter. How were they supposed to survive like this? They were here to carry out a mission, to watch and prevent others from seeing the young mystical beasts being trained, but in the end, there was a peak expert following them at all times. Moreover, it was the kind of guy who could turn him into minced meat with a single slap if he was unhappy. Not only could he not carry out his duties, but he also could not run away. This was really, King unlucky. Chen Wanfeng and the other two were slightly better behaved. At least, no matter how scared they were, they could still put up the demeanor of the young masters of aristocratic families. "Brother Yun, I think this three-eye boar," Lei Dongtian suggested, "if you want to improve its bloodline, I'm afraid this is still a little lacking." Yin Yang said, "May I ask what would you do if Brother Lei were to do it?" "I'll directly replace its blood and upgrade its bloodline from its roots. At least, this three-eye boar can rise to the level of a 9th-level intermediate mystical beast," Lei Dongtian said in a strategic manner. Yin Yang nodded. "Brother Lei's thinking is different and far-sighted, but what kind of mystical beast's blood should we replace it with?" Lei Dongtian said, "The blood of a 10th-level mystical beast, the Bear of Earth, will do. Fix the Bear of Earth side by side with the three-eye boar. One side will release the original blood while the other side will be injected with the Bear of Earth's blood. After one cycle, it will be done. Chiu Yun-san and the Chiu family members listened with disbelief. Their only thought was to see billions of mystical beasts galloping past. F***CK. If we could capture the bear of earth, why would we need to capture this three-eye boar? This scoundrel was just standing there and talking nonsense. Also, sacrificing a 10th level mystical beast, the bear of earth, to allow the three-eye boar to evolve to the 9th level intermediate, is this a worthwhile trade? Are we stupid or are you stupid? How could you do such a losing deal? Yin Yang said, Brother Lei's idea is very feasible. As the saying goes, one shouldn't trouble two people for one thing. I'll leave the matter of capturing the bear of earth to Brother Lei and the follow-up of upgrading this three-eye boar to you as well. This young brother wishes Brother Lei to successfully complete this unprecedented feat. Lei Dongtian's expression froze as he said, haha, haha. Yin Yang chuckled. Chiu Yun-san chuckled. Lei Dongtian turned to look at Chiu Yun-san, his gaze as sharp as a knife. What are you chuckling at? Chiu Yun-san immediately felt unwell. You chuckle, boss is chuckling as well, but when it comes to me, I chuckle, it's just for fun. Why are you looking at me like you want to kill someone? Isn't this differential treatment too obvious? What? Can't I even chuckle now? Chiu Yun-san was also a descendant of a noble family. How could he accept such humiliation? Even if he knew he could not win, he could not die of cowardice. He straightened his neck and said, this three-eye boar belongs to my family. I'm the one who has the most right to speak here. What's wrong with me chuckling? Lei Dongtian stared at him for a long time before he suddenly chuckled and said, so it belongs to your family. To think that I was still hesitating if I should promise Brother Yun to capture the bear of earth. Now, I don't have to hesitate anymore. Chiu Yun-san felt like grass was growing in his heart as he said angrily, what kind of existence is the bear of earth? Even if you agree, you won't be able to capture it. Lei Dongtian rolled his eyes at Chiu Yun-san, looking like he was about to lose his temper. The bear of earth is said to be the pinnacle of existence in this world. How can it be captured so easily? Xia Bingchuan hugged his arms and snorted. But now that someone has spoken the truth, you're going to beat him up. Chen Wanfeng chuckled and said, you guys are digging up old wounds. If I don't hit you, who should I hit? All of you are asking for it. You know that it's impossible to capture the bear of earth, yet you insist on making things difficult for young Master Lei. You deserve to be beaten up. Lei Dongtian's handsome face darkened completely. He did not think much of these people, so he had only said it casually, using some high-class and unattainable things to show his status. As the saying went, he was just pretending. However, he did not expect someone to be so serious that he had been cheated out of his pretense. Although the three of them knew that Lei Dongtian's cultivation base was strong and far beyond what they could afford to provoke or even recognize, this fellow had beaten Dong Tianling up so badly. Naturally, they would not let go of the rare opportunity to mock him. Especially when this bastard had actually pretended to be pretentious in front of them, saying that he would use the blood of the bear of earth to exchange for the blood of the three-eye boar. This pretentiousness was a little too much. He was acting like an idiot. Everyone knew that these two mystical beasts were 2 levels apart. The difference was more than heaven and earth. The bear of earth was at the top of the known mystical beast food chain in the Tianxian continent. It was even an existence that surpassed the level of the mystical beasts. It was already difficult enough to be shaken, what more to capture it alive and extract its blood? Moreover, even if one could capture the bear of earth alive, who would be so foolish as to waste it and use the blood of the bear of earth to exchange for the blood of the three-eye boar? Such an act could no longer be described as an ordinary prodigal. For example, would you be willing to use the blood of a dragon to exchange for the blood of a snake? Unless the person who made the decision was an idiot who had too much imagination and pretended to be an idiot. To think that this fellow thought he was smart enough to brag like this, saying that he could help the three-eye boar to advance. Is this a classic example of treating us like country bumpkins? According to your theory, we could even say that we would capture a phoenix and exchange its blood with the phantom vulture. Then, the phantom vulture would possess the bloodline of the phoenix, greatly strengthening its foundation and level. Who doesn't know how to brag? Lei Dongtian's expression was dark as he said faintly, "The three of you have guts. You really have guts." Qiu Yunsan smirked and said, "Why? Can't young Master Lei hear the truth? Are you going to beat us up like how you beat Dong Tianlong? We can't beat you anyway. Why don't we strike a pose? We'll listen to you and let you do whatever you want." The experts from the three noble families scratched their ears and cheeks anxiously, their hearts filled with misery. What was wrong with these three masters? The person in front of them was not someone they could afford to offend. Other than that, the three men's performance had also made the experts from the four noble families feel gratified. After all, this young master of theirs still had some redeeming qualities. When it came to treating his brothers, he was still quite loyal. Based on this, everyone felt that, even if they were to fight later, it would not be too much of a loss for them to bear the beating. At this moment, Yun Yang spoke up in a timely manner, hollering angrily, "What is going on? What are the three of you up to? Huh? Are you going to rebel together?" Chun Wanfeng said, "How would we dare? We saw that young Master Lei had a good idea and wanted to goad him into doing this. I didn't expect young Master Lei to not fall for it." Yun Yang seemed to be even angrier as he said, "Brother Lei is an honorable guest. How can you treat an honorable guest like this? Brother Lei was only joking with you. Can't you even take a joke now? No matter what, it has at least broadened your horizons. How can you all be like this?" Yin Yang's tone was stern as he pointed his aura at the three men, displaying the manner of a superior boss teaching his lackeys a lesson. Chun Wanfeng and the other two agreed, "We were wrong. It's all our fault. We had eyes but failed to recognize Mount Tai. How dare we measure Hai Shui?" Yun Yang turned to Lei Dongtian and said, "Brother Lei, please don't mind them. Although the four of them are unbearable, they are not bad at heart. It's just that their tempers are like the one you beat up. They are a little despicable. Brother Lei, please be magnanimous." Chapter 332. Yin Yang laughed and said, "Brother Lei is broad-minded and tolerant. A great man does not hold grudges against a lowly man. Actually, if we were to talk about these three fellows normally, as long as they don't target our own people, it's quite fun to listen to them being despicable to others." Lei Dongtian chuckled dryly and said, "Not bad indeed." Yin Yang then laughed to himself. As he laughed, the group of two naturally became a group of five. At the same time, Chun Wanfeng and the rest began to get closer to Lei Dongtian under Yun Yang's hint. "Young Master Lei. Big Brother Lei. Brother Lei." The atmosphere gradually became harmonious. Very harmonious, quite harmonious. Occasionally, they would quarrel. Lei Dongtian's sense of superiority could not be suppressed and flared up again. Thus, Chun Wanfeng and the rest began to taunt them. How could Lei Dongtian be a match for the three of them when it came to verbal attacks? His anger was burning from the taunts, but he was too embarrassed to show it in front of Yun Yang. Finally, it was afternoon. Lei Dongtian was not in the mood to interact with Yun Yang anymore. He sat under the flowering tree and drank his tea sullenly. He could not even be considered leisurely. Obviously, the experience in the morning had made him very unhappy. Coincidentally, a messenger bird landed in the residence of Yun with a swoosh. Lao Mei retrieved the message and passed it to Yun Yang. Yun Yang glanced at it and excused himself before walking towards the flowering tree. Obviously, the message was related to Lei Dongtian. "What is it?" Lei Dongtian's interest was piqued again. It seemed that there was news. "I need Brother Lei to give me a guarantee." Yun Yang said hesitantly, "I'm not afraid of Brother Lei's offense. I can't afford to provoke you or the Four Seasons Tower. My small hands and legs are too limited." Lei Dongtian laughed and said, don't worry. I will take care of everything. Our fight will not involve you at all." The corners of Yun Yang's lips twitched as he thought to himself, "You've been coming to my house for the past 2 days. Do you really think I'm blind? Once you go against the Four Seasons Tower, this brother here will definitely be dragged into the mess. The first person they will come for will be me. The Four Seasons Tower's tactic of targeting the people around the target was their most common tactic. If they were to fall for the same trick, how could they justify themselves? I asked for a guarantee, and you gave me such a guarantee. This makes me speechless. Do you think you have a golden tongue? If you're so sure, why don't you go to heaven? According to the information I've gathered, someone has indeed seen the two ladies. Yin Yang unfolded the report and laid it flat on the table, reading it with Lei Dongtian. He pointed with his finger and said, but their whereabouts are extremely elusive. Up until now, there have been people who have seen it in the east and south of the city, Yin Yang said, but this situation doesn't seem normal, does it? A cold light flashed in Lei Dongtian's eyes. This action is indeed contrary to common sense. Could it be that this guy is luring me out? Yin Yang was taken aback for a moment before he mused. It's not impossible. Lei Dongtian grunted angrily and said, this is too much. How dare the Four Seasons Tower be so arrogant? Today, the black-robed elder, Old Mu, did not come with Lei Dongtian. Instead, he was sent out by Lei Dongtian to inquire about the Four Seasons Tower and the Nine Supremes. To be safe, he had to investigate with great effort to verify what Yin Yang had said. Brother Lei, the Four Seasons Tower is the top force in Tianxian continent. They have always been arrogant. Although their actions are too arrogant, they have the confidence to do so. Yin Yang deliberated and said, Brother Lei, if it's not that important, perhaps, why don't you give up? Lei Dongtian's expression changed. What do you mean? Don't you know what it means if I give up? Yin Yang said, don't be angry, Brother Lei. I'm doing this for your own good. The Four Seasons Tower is the scariest organization in Tianxian continent for thousands of years. Brother Lei, it's better to be safe than sorry. A real man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife. A moment of forbearance is enough. Lei Dongtian was displeased and interrupted Yun Yang's words. Brother Yun, I know you're doing this for my own good and you're worried about me. However, you really shouldn't have said this. What do you mean by, a real man doesn't have to worry about not having a wife? My wife has been kidnapped and I'm afraid to give up because of the enemy's force? If I really give up like this, how can I, Lei Dongtian, still have the face to stand in this world? Yin Yang sighed and said, Brother Lei, other than the Four Seasons Tower's massive organization and shocking force, its leader is the pinnacle of the world and has the ability to compete with the world's unrivaled expert. Although Brother Lei's family is well-learned and your cultivation base is earth-shattering, I'm afraid you're still lacking when compared to these experienced experts. It's not that this young brother wants to crush Brother Lei's confidence, it's just that this battle is too dangerous. If anything goes wrong, it'll be hard for you to escape unscathed. Instead of taking the risk, why don't you protect yourself first? A gentleman doesn't stand under a collapsing wall. Lei Dongtian waved his hand in an unquestionable manner and said, there's no need to say more about this. I have to save my fiancé no matter what. Yin Yang sighed. In fact, Lei Dongtian was very anxious now. The two ladies were as beautiful as flowers and jade. Any one of them was a rare beauty in this world. If they were to fall into someone else's hands, who knew if the other party was a lecher? Even if he wasn't, how could his mindset not change when he was guarding these two beauties every day? What if their chastity was violated? Lei Dongtian's plan, which he had been planning for so long, would be ruined and all his efforts would be in vain. What was the point of talking about the primordial Yin of chaos? What was there to be confused about when even the normal primordial Yin was gone? Since Brother Lei insists on taking action, I won't stop you anymore. I'll do my best to help. However, according to the information I've gathered, the other party's whereabouts are secretive and they don't have a fixed residence, Yun Yang said. It's difficult to block the target directly and lock on to his position. Lei Dongtian said, I'll have to rely on Brother Yun, the local tyrant's help on this. This foolish brother is counting on you now. Yin Yang said, what are you saying, Brother Lei. We've been friends for a while and we've become close friends. Even if there's a mountain of daggers and a sea of fire in front of us, this young brother will find these people for Brother Lei as soon as possible. Yin Yang's words were spoken with exceptional sincerity. There was no hint of deceit in his words. Lei Dongtian was greatly touched and said warmly, Brother Yun, when this matter is over, Lei, am willing to be sworn brothers with you and be a true pair of good brothers from now on. For life. Yin Yang said seriously, good brothers, for life. Lei Dongtian laughed, today is such a joyous day. It was unknown if the messenger bird had sensed the harmonious atmosphere between the two of them, but from that moment onwards, it came continuously. The movements of all the major and minor matters in Tiantang City, which side had similar suspicious characters, the analysis, and so on, were all clear and detailed. Lei Dongtian was amazed by this extremely detailed intelligence system. He was truly impressed by the extraordinary capability of young Master Yun, the local tyrant. Brother Yun, I didn't expect your intelligence network to be so impressive. It's impressive. Lei Dongtian praised. Mine? Yin Yang looked like he did not know whether to laugh or cry. Brother Lei, you've overestimated me. I don't have such capabilities. This time, I've used my father's seal to mobilize the royal dark web. When the old man returns, I'm bound to be beaten up. Lei Dongtian was stunned as well. After a long time, he suddenly laughed and gave a thumbs up. Brother Yun, you're persistent. This brother will remember Brother Yun's deep kindness. Yin Yang was amused. Those are all minor details. It's not too late to talk about it when it's time to face it. Now, finding the person is more important. Don't worry, Brother Lei. As long as this person is still in Tiantang City, I can find him even if he's 3 feet underground. In the afternoon, when the sky was about to turn dark, another important piece of information came. Yin Yang skimmed through the information and an unprecedentedly serious expression flashed across his eyes. 2 people have stayed in the tower to Heaven Inn. One is skinny and dressed in black, surrounded by saber energy. The other is like ice and snow, giving off a frosty feeling. This piece of information made Yin Yang think of Venerable Lord Saber almost instinctively. Was he the black-clothed saber wielder? Who was the other person? Yin Yang sighed and closed the information. He did not take the initiative to explain this time, so Lei Dongtian naturally did not know what this information meant. He looked at Yin Yang with a dumbfounded expression, waiting for him to explain. There's no further movement for now. We can only wait and see if there's any news at night. Yin Yang sighed. All right, let's talk about it at night. Lei Dongtian sighed as well. Lei Dongtian knew that Yin Yang had already done his best to help him. It was not that Yin Yang did not try his best if there was no further news. Naturally, he followed his advice. At this moment, a black shadow flashed. Old Mu had returned. Lei Dongtian glanced at him and Old Mu nodded slightly. If so, I'll go back to the inn first and wait for Brother Yun's good news. Lei Dongtian stood up. All right. Yin Yang responded quickly. Just as Lei Dongtian and Old Mu left the residence of Yun, Lei Dongtian asked, How is it? Old Mu said, More than 90% of what young Master Yun has said is true. Lei Dongtian was stunned. What about the remaining 10%? Old Mu said, the remaining 10% is probably the opinion of Tiantang's people. Their opinion is very different from young Master Yun's, or perhaps it's the complete opposite. They all think that the 9 Supremes are heroes and those who have been killed since Supreme Win's reappearance are all spies, lurkers, and people who deserve to die. Other than that, the time, cultivation base, and other aspects, including the battle with the 4 Seasons Tower, are all the same as what young Master Yun said. Chapter 333. Old Mu said, Young Master is right. It seems that Yun Yang is being honest with me. This fellow is not bad indeed. Lei Dongtian thought about it and said, regarding this matter, there is no doubt about it. Everything now points to the imposter Supreme Wind, the agent of the Four Seasons Tower's grand plan. Old Mu was dumbfounded. Was it really just an arbitrary conclusion? Lei Dongtian said, if it goes on like this, it can also be concluded that the Four Seasons Tower is deliberately targeting me? A cold glint flashed in his eyes. Old Mu was dumbfounded again. How did it become, deliberately targeting you? Where did this deduction come from? How did it come to this conclusion? However, why would the Four Seasons Tower target me? Since the other party has done so, there must be a reason. What is the reason? Lei Dongtian thought hard and said, could it be that my coming down this time has been leaked out by some force? Someone doesn't want me to cultivate the 7 emotions praxis? Using the Four Seasons Tower to stop me? Just like how I lured the Ji family and the Yu family? Yes. If the other families want to target me, no matter who it is, there will inevitably be traces left behind. After all, the cultivation method of the Bound of Universe and the cultivation method of Tianxian continent are not the same at all. So I can only act with the combat strength of this world? The Four Seasons Tower is the strongest force in this world, the kind that is second to none. It is the best combination. Lei Dongtian mumbled to himself. Under the guidance of his first impression, he pinned a huge bucket of *T on the Four Seasons Tower's head like a hot knife through butter. Old Mu was still dumbfounded. He was really puzzled now. He did not know how his young master could be so sure that he had directly condemned the Four Seasons Tower. He murmured, young lord, do we need to verify this matter again? Lei Dongtian said confidently, there is no need. I already know everything. As the saying goes, a small clue can reveal the general trend. Moreover, we already have so much evidence. Why do we need more verification? So much evidence? Old Mu felt that his brain was really not enough. Was it really as the young master had said, that his brain was really a block of wood? Lei Dongtian looked at Old Mu as if he had seen through his thoughts. A sense of superiority arose spontaneously in his mind. This old man was so clear about something, but he still had a confused look on his face. Had he been living like a dog all these years? Otherwise, he would really be a blockhead. We've already proven the truth of Yun Yang's words, haven't we? Lei Dongtian said, as long as Yun Yang isn't lying, it's enough. Supreme Wind is fake anyway, isn't it? Yes. Since this Supreme Wind is fake, where is he from? Other than the Four Seasons Tower, who else can impersonate him? Yes. Going against the imperial court of Yutang and possessing the various manifestation cultivation methods of the 9 Supremes, it must be the Four Seasons Tower that had annihilated the 9 Supremes. Since Supreme Wind has displayed the multifaceted cultivation method, it can be inferred that Supreme Wind is from the Four Seasons Tower, isn't it? Other than the Four Seasons Tower's men, it can't be anyone else, can it? Yes. How long has it been since I came out to look for a wife and a cauldron? About 4 to 5 months. If there really was a connection, would it have dragged on for so long? The reason why they didn't attack us in the past few months is probably because they haven't been contacted yet. After all, our tracks were unusually well hidden, and we didn't even enter the realm. If you put it this way, it seems to make sense. What do you mean by seems? That's probably the truth. Lei Dongtian said exasperatedly, it was only when they managed to contact us that they started to attack us. Furthermore, the Four Seasons Tower's men must have guessed that we have an extraordinary background and didn't intend to face us head-on. That's why Supreme Wind made a move and took the 2 women away. If it wasn't me, why would he take these 2 women away to deal with me? On the surface, Supreme Wind is Yutang's man. He can deceive others and disrupt my investigation. Isn't this logical? In fact, if we hadn't found Yun Yang and gained his trust, it wouldn't have been an easy task to investigate further if we hadn't figured out Supreme Wind's real identity. Besides, we might have gone in the wrong direction and wreaked havoc in the empire of Yutang. Then, the Four Seasons Tower would have been able to watch the show from the side, wouldn't it? Ultimately, our efforts would have been in vain, wouldn't it? Moreover, we wouldn't have been able to trace the mastermind, would we? Old Moo slowly understood. Yes, it makes sense. Let's go back to the starting point. Since the other party had chosen to take the women away at the very last moment, if it wasn't targeting me, what's the reason? Yes, young master is right. Then why would the Four Seasons Tower, the real owner of Supreme Wind, target me? The Four Seasons Tower doesn't even know who I am, so why would they target me? Therefore, they should know who I am, right? Lei Dongtian analyzed with great wisdom. The Four Seasons Tower could create such a huge commotion, the people they sent should be of some importance. At least, they shouldn't be lechers, right? Yes, young master is right. Therefore, there must be something fishy about this. The only explanation for this is that our information has been leaked. Someone doesn't want me to level up, so they colluded with the Four Seasons Tower to launch an attack on us. Taking the cauldron away is the best and most effective way to stop me. The final conclusion is that this is a conspiracy against me. Lei Dongtian's face was dark. However, we still don't know which of the few families is behind this. No matter which family it is, as long as young master captures the Four Seasons Tower's opportunists, we will know. Old Moo said. You're finally smart for once. Lei Dongtian looked at Old Moo with approval. Yes, that's right. The key point now lies with the Four Seasons Tower. We don't need to destroy the entire Four Seasons Tower. We only need to find this key point and rescue the people. Then, everything will be fine. Young master is wise. Wise or not, we still need to find the people. Lei Dongtian sighed. I'll take a nap first. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Old Moo, keep an eye out at night. All right. Lei Dongtian chased Old Moo out and sighed again. Old Moo was good in every aspect, but he was a little stubborn. If he was not pointed out clearly, he would never be able to think of something even if he died. I'm a little lacking in wit. Lei Dongtian sighed, feeling a little remorseful for himself. I have such unparalleled intelligence, but I can only pretend in front of my own servant. What's the use of using my intelligence to crush Old Moo every day? But if I don't crush him, this old thing's brain is like a rock. What a fool. Lei Dongtian sighed and took out 2 more paintings, looking at them obsessively. The wind blew and the clouds rolled. A white cloud moved with the wind, floating leisurely in the sky above Tiantang City. Yin Yang, who was in the form of a cloud, was thinking in his heart, are the 2 people living in the tower to heaven in from the Four Seasons Tower? If so, how great would that be? With this question in mind, Yin Yang quietly approached the tower to heaven in. The white cloud floated leisurely in the breeze. Yin Yang split his deific consciousness into 2 and sent one of them into the tower to heaven in with the wind. However, Yin Yang had searched all the rooms in the tower to heaven in, but he did not find the 2 targets. Were they not? Yin Yang could not help but feel a little disappointed. The timing was perfect. If the Four Seasons Tower came at this time, they could further facilitate this and grasp the entire situation without leaving anything out. After all, Yin Yang was now in between 2 terrifying forces, stirring up terror. If he lost control, he would lose everything. Of course, it would be best to complete the situation as soon as possible and make the 2 sides kill each other. However, there was nothing he could do if he did not find his targets. Just as Yin Yang was about to leave, he felt a sudden jolt in his heart. The breeze was even more soothing as it floated towards the roof of the tower to heaven in. It had been snowing in Tiantang City for the past few days and had only stopped this afternoon. Naturally, the roof was piled with a thick layer of snow that was almost 3 feet high. At this moment, there were 2 people standing peacefully on the accumulated snow on the roof. One of them was dressed in white. It should be said that this person was snow white from head to toe. Not only were his clothes, pants, shoes, and socks snow white, even his hair and eyebrows were snow white. Looking at him, he was almost no different from pure white snow, a natural snow white color. The other person, on the other hand, was completely black from head to toe. The two of them just stood there, reflecting each other. It was just that it was an evil scene. Yin Yang almost thought that he was looking at the two legendary assassins of the concourse of the underworld, the Black and White Impermanence. As for the thin and tall man dressed in black, especially the unique aura he exuded, Yin Yang recognized his identity at first glance. Venerable Lord Saber. There was a saber in the sky. After confirming the identity of Venerable Lord Saber, Yin Yang was even more careful as he moved forward with the breeze. It had indeed come. The cool breeze flowed more gently, almost as if it was gentle. It was even more careful than before, and it didn't even stir up the air currents in the surrounding atmosphere. However, the person dressed in white suddenly frowned and raised his head gently. At this moment, Yin Yang saw a face with a white beard and eyebrows. Although this face was also white, it was not the kind of ghastly white or pale. Instead, it was a jade-like whiteness. Standing there, he was like a flawless jade sculpture that was meticulously polished and carved out of white jade. A look of contemplation flashed across the face of the man in white, his expression gradually becoming solemn. Second brother, you, Venerable Lord Saber asked. The man in white shook his head and did not answer. A sudden chill was emitted, followed by a hand grabbing out. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. More than a dozen hands grabbed out consecutively, forming more than a dozen black holes in the air. The man in white observed the positions of these black holes with a solemn gaze, waiting until these black holes were slowly filled with air. Between heaven and earth, the original silence was restored. However, his gaze still did not relax. Second brother, what is it? Venerable Lord Saber asked. The man in white said faintly, I suddenly sensed something just now, an uncomfortable feeling of being watched. I couldn't help but think of Supreme Wind's wind manifestation ability that you mentioned. This is his territory, of course, it's best to be careful when doing things. Although that was what he said, his eyes were still scanning the air around him as if he was searching for something. Yin Yang, who was in the air, was drenched in cold sweat, almost trembling. Amazing. Amazing. Chapter 334. Yin Yang had intended to get closer just now, but his movements were so light that there was not even a trace. Yet, the man in white had still sensed it. Not only had he sensed it, he had also torn the air around him in an unreasonable manner without saying a word, completely destroying it. The incident just now had happened right in front of him. He was so close to capturing Yin Yang with a single hand. At the critical moment just now, Yin Yang had decisively split up the power of the wind manifestation, keeping only the smallest part of it. Carrying his deific consciousness, he rose up quickly. He had only risen less than 5 feet when he felt that his original position had become a black hole. Without the support of his deific consciousness, the portion of the wind manifestation disintegrated instantly, never to be seen again. Such a method, to be able to shatter the void with a mere thought, was truly terrifying. Venerable Lord Saber chuckled and said, with second brother here, how would that supreme wind have the guts to come? Second brother is worrying too much. The man in white snorted and said, never be careless, even more so for us cultivators. The path of cultivation is rugged and difficult. A single mistake is enough to destroy a dynasty. It was the same for the 9 Supremes back then, it was the same for He Hanqing the day before yesterday, and you too. If you continue to have such an attitude, you might end up like this one day. His eyes were still filled with suspicion and confusion. Staring at the dark night sky, he was unsettled for a long time. After a while, he said faintly, do you know why I acted? A cultivator's intuition towards danger is above his own cultivation base, experience, and knowledge. I can even feel that the aura has not completely disappeared. Venerable Lord Saber was stunned. Huh? Yin Yang was even more frightened upon hearing this, rising into the sky at top speed. At such a critical juncture, he could no longer care about hiding his traces. Because he had already sensed that there was a terrifying power rapidly forming on the body of the white-clothed man. Once this force was formed, at such a close distance, he would not be spared even if he were to transform into wind and cloud, or even nature itself. Although the other party could not lock on to his real body, as long as he launched an indiscriminate wide-area attack, targeting the entire space, he could definitely inflict heavy damage on him or even kill him instantly. It was not a joke. Danger was imminent, so he had to quickly transform into the wind and leave this dangerous place. Almost at the same time Yin-Yang made his move, a circle of frigid aura formed abruptly. An area of 1,000 feet was covered in snow and ice, turning into a space filled with frigid frost in the blink of an eye. Even the air within this range was completely sealed within this circle of extreme cold power. Fortunately, in the instant that this circle of extremely cold aura rose, a tornado broke away from the area enveloped by the extremely cold aura and rushed up 1,000 feet into the sky. It rose up into the sky like a dragon, and in an instant, it disappeared into the pitch-black night sky. Pop pop pop, a series of cracking sounds could be heard. The extremely cold aura slowly shrank and retracted, revealing the gloomy and furious faces of the man in white and Venerable Lord Saber once again. Venerable Lord Saber widened his eyes and stuck out his tongue. It's really just beside us, the white-clothed man cautiously observed the night sky like before. He did not speak for a long time. After another long while, he coldly snorted and said indifferently, "This mission will definitely not be as easy to complete as you think it will be." Venerable Lord Saber was ashamed. From the beginning to the end, he had not noticed anything. He had obviously fought with supreme wind. Not only did Venerable Lord Snow see through it first, he had even completed the attack. If he was alone, he would not have lost his life. However, as long as he continued to speak, he would definitely reveal more secrets that would be eavesdropped by the other party. Thinking of this, Venerable Lord Saber shuddered. Obviously, Supreme Wind's cultivation base had improved a lot compared to when he had besieged Hehanqing. Otherwise, he would not have been so impressive. The man in white stood at the top of the tower to heaven in. After a full quarter of an hour, he exhaled dejectedly and said, "Thousands of feet up in the sky, the wind is scattered and formless. It's destined to be untraceable." He frowned slowly. Has the power of the 9 Supremes become so powerful? Venerable Lord Saber said, "This is only Supreme Wind alone." The man in white said faintly, "So what if he's alone? Isn't it the 9 Supremes?" He said slowly, "During the battle at Tianxian Cliff that day, we had gathered so many top-notch combat forces and had the support of the formation to seal off the 9 Supremes' escape route. However, even with such a flawless setup, one of them still managed to escape. As long as it's related to the 9 Supremes, we can't treat it lightly. It's never too much to be cautious." Venerable Lord Saber said respectfully, "Second brother is right. This young brother has learned his lesson." He had always thought that there was not much difference between the 5 Venerable Lords. Even if he was not as good as the other 4, the difference was still limited. He might not even be in a hurry. However, judging from today's incident, second brother Venerable Lord Snow's cultivation base was so much stronger than his own. The difference was already immeasurable. The truth was right in front of him. Venerable Lord Saber immediately felt a sense of urgency that he could not suppress. Mr. Nian had already warned Venerable Lord Saber about the difference in cultivation base, but it was not as exciting as the truth before his eyes. It turned out that he had really fallen behind so much. "Second brother, what's the level of your cultivation base now?" Venerable Lord Saber asked in an ingratiating manner. The man in white's face that was as cold as snow showed a hint of disappointment. "The 8th heaven. I've been stuck at the pinnacle of the 8th heaven for quite some time, almost a year and a half. I still can't find the opportunity to break through." He sighed, "Ever since the ambush on the 9 Supremes, my cultivation base has not improved at all." The 8th heaven. The muscles on Venerable Lord Saber's face could not help but twitch. He was only in the third heaven, but this second brother was already in the eighth heaven? However, listening to his tone, it seemed that he felt that his progress was slow. How fast did he plan to progress? Or rather, what level did he want to progress to? What was the ideal level? Although the path of cultivation was endless, there had to be a limit. There was a limit, right? Second brother's progress is really fast. The great Tao is in sight. Venerable Lord Saber instinctively felt that he was a head shorter, his flattery intensified. If you weren't so meddlesome, your progress wouldn't be slow. The man in white said coldly, you're as busy as a dog every day. Naturally, your progress has become as slow as a pig. This is within reason and within expectation. Venerable Lord Saber's face was flushed. He felt as if a piece of burning charcoal had entered his throat. He could neither swallow it nor spit it out. This choke was 2F** King porcelain. They were all brothers. Even if he were to tell the truth, was there a need to be so straightforward and undisguised? The man in white glanced at Venerable Lord Saber and said slowly, don't you think the words are pleasant to hear? No matter how unpleasant the words are, they're not as cruel as the reality. If your progress can't catch up and your cultivation base stagnates, this position will most likely have nothing to do with you when the next round of deification of 4 seasons begins. Do you think that you still have a lot of time to waste? Venerable Lord Saber's face was bitter. He was speechless for a long while, not knowing what to say. At this time, any explanation or cover-up would be an excuse. Even if he were to pledge his determination, it would be meaningless. Just like what Venerable Lord Snow had said, no matter how unpleasant the words were, they were not as cruel as the reality. The reality was so close, one could only face it on their own. You may leave. The man in white flicked his sleeves and said faintly, I'm telling you for the last time. Think about it carefully. If you give up on yourself, no one can help you. Perhaps the next time we meet, you won't have the right to call me second brother anymore. If that day really comes, don't blame anyone. It's all your own choice. The expression on Venerable Lord Saber's face was uncertain, constantly changing. The strong sense of bitterness had never been as clear as it was today. Yin-Yang had turned into the wind and left in time, avoiding the fatal crisis. He was extremely grateful. Yin-Yang had already made some predictions during this trip and had tried his best to overestimate the other party's ability. However, he had never expected that this person's ability would be at such a level, possessing such earth-shattering power. In just a snap of a finger, he had been annihilated twice in an instant. It was truly remarkable and terrifying. After walking far away, Yin-Yang suddenly recalled that it was not the first time he had experienced such an aura. The battle at Tianxian Cliff that day seemed to have been accompanied by an extremely chilly air flow from the very beginning. There was even snow and ice falling. The feeling was extremely similar to what he felt today. The extremely chilly aura was also familiar. Could it be that this man in white was also one of the murderers who had attacked Tianxian Cliff back then? Yin-Yang's killing intent flashed wildly. After such a long time, there was finally another person who had emerged after He Han-Qing. Finally, I've found another murderer from back then. No matter who you are, no matter what cultivation base you have, since you've come to Tiantang City, then, don't go back anymore. Repent in the netherworld. Lei Dongtian was still immersed in the dream of love that he had weaved. Through repeated hypnosis, he felt that he had truly fallen deeply in love with these 2 girls. His passion was unwavering, and his infatuation would never change. If it were not for his cultivation journey, he would even be willing to die for these 2 girls. Although he was only looking at the portraits, he could feel that he had been with these 2 girls for a very, very long time, and he longed to have them forever, never to be separated. Unfortunately, I'm sorry. I love you both. However, I want to destroy you both with my own hands, to destroy you both, to make you both wish you were dead, to be consigned to eternal damnation. I'm really helpless about this. There is a way to satisfy both sides in this world, to not let down cultivation and not to let down love. Lei Dongtian felt remorseful, feeling as if his intestines had been twisted and turned, lost in his own thoughts. I'm actually a Casanova, it was at this moment. Outside the window. The sound of the wind surged violently. A hurricane broke through the window of Lei Dongtian's room with a loud bang. Lei Dongtian saw the sudden change, but he did not panic. His hands made a circle abruptly and a misty green air force appeared, enveloping everything in the room. Following that, he roared and was ready to counterattack. Unexpectedly, the hurricane suddenly disappeared, leaving only an illusory shadow floating quietly in the sky outside the window. It floated here and there, without any substance. "Young Master Lei?" A strange voice spoke. Seeing this, Lei Dongtian naturally knew who was coming. Lei Dongtian gritted his teeth. "Are you Lord Supreme Wind, whose name is known throughout the Tianxian continent?" Chapter 335. The strange voice chuckled faintly and said, "Young Master Lei has indeed inquired about me. With such a profound cultivation base, you are still so cautious. The descendant of the Lei family is indeed remarkable." Lei Dongtian snorted and said, "I wonder what Lord Supreme Wind wishes to do by visiting so late at night?" A loud thud could be heard. Old Mu barged into the room. Seeing the scene before him, he could not help but be stunned and was about to rush forward. Lei Dongtian stretched out his hand to stop Old Mu. "Don't be impatient, let's observe the situation quietly." "Ha ha ha." Lord Supreme Wind let out a relaxed chuckle. "Young Master Lei is still the most sensible one. Although I'm not your opponent in a real fight, it's difficult for you to make me stay. Instead of fighting in vain, it's better to talk calmly." Lei Dongtian snorted and extended his hand to pull a chair behind him. He sat down facing the window and said faintly, "As mentioned earlier, Lord Supreme Wind has come to visit in the middle of the night. Is there anything I can help you with?" "There's no need to help." The blurry figure of Lord Supreme Wind's voice carried a hint of amusement. "But there are a few requests." Lei Dongtian sneered, "A few? Please speak." Lord Supreme Wind said faintly, "The first thing is, I'm rather interested in the cultivation method of the Bound of Universe's Lei family. I'd like to learn a thing or two from young Lord Lei. If young Lord Lei is willing to teach me, it would be even better." Lei Dongtian's handsome face twisted as he laughed weirdly, "Heh heh heh. You wish." At this moment, he could already be sure of the current situation. He had been betrayed. He had been betrayed by the people from his own realm, completely betrayed. He had never mentioned the Bound of Universe's Lei family before this, not even to Yun Yang. However, this Lord Supreme Wind before him had exposed Lei Dongtian's biggest secret the moment he opened his mouth. If it was not the people from the Bound of Universe who had betrayed him, what else could it be? The look in Lei Dongtian's eyes was bone-chilling. Supreme Wind is a straightforward man, going straight to the target's request. However, before I respond to your request, I'd like to ask you a question. I wonder who told you about the name of the Bound of Universe's Lei family? Or should I say, where did you get this information from? Lord Supreme Wind said calmly, "Young Lord Lei, although I'm the one who needs your help first, I've already repaid you by giving you the 5 words of the Bound of Universe's Lei family. You asking me like this has turned into you asking me for a favor. Since our positions have been swapped, shouldn't young Lord Lei show more sincerity?" Lei Dongtian snorted, "How dare you? What else do you want?" Lord Supreme Wind said, "I've been paying attention to young Lord Lei for a long time. I'm touched by young Lord Lei's fondness for the 2 ladies. Based on the principle of fulfilling your wishes, I'm willing to return these 2 ladies to young Lord Lei. In return, young Master Lei should give us some unimportant things as a token of appreciation." Lei Dongtian's face darkened. "What do you want? Tell me." "Resources such as heaven and earth treasures are not in my eyes. However, the praxis of 7 emotions that young Lord is cultivating now." Lord Supreme Wind chuckled strangely, I'm very interested. This sincerity is more than enough. Ha 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 ha. Lei Dongtian chuckled strangely without warning. As he laughed, he shook his head. I really don't know where your courage comes from. I really don't know who told you about these ridiculous things. Also, where do you get your confidence from? How dare you come here and clamor at me so brazenly? Lei Dongtian's gaze was filled with mockery and pity as it focused on the blurry silhouette outside the window. Perhaps it's a coincidence that you know about the existence of the Bound of Universe and the name of the Bound of Universe's Lei family. However, you don't know what kind of existence the Lei family is, do you? Outside the window, Supreme Wind said faintly, I don't need to know so much. I only need to ensure that I can grow stronger as soon as possible. For Yutong, for the people of the world, I will do whatever it takes. His speech was filled with the generosity and boldness of a loyal man, as if he was speaking the truth with certainty. Ha ha ha. Lei Dongtian guffawed again, but this time, his laughter was extremely hearty, as if he had just heard the funniest joke in the world. How King great. I almost believed it. He laughed and said in a faint voice, before this, I've never thought that there would be such a strong organization in this world that could actually achieve such an impossible thing. Lord Supreme Wind said darkly, oh? What are you trying to say? Lei Dongtian said, nothing much. I'm just praising the Four Seasons Tower, the strongest force in this world. It's indeed true to its reputation. It's truly remarkable. The blurry silhouette outside the window seemed to waver as it spoke in a raspy voice, the Four Seasons Tower. The Four Seasons Tower is the biggest enemy of this reputed one's entire life. So what if this tower is powerful? Sooner or later, I will uproot this organization and completely destroy it. Lei Dongtian said mockingly, is that so? Tell me, how stupid would I be if I believed you? Let me ask you one more thing. How can you say it with such certainty, as if it's true and you really think so? He sneered, the so-called annihilation of the Four Seasons Tower, does it mean that you want to annihilate yourself as well? Outside the window, Supreme Wind did not budge. He sneered and said, young Lord Lei, have you not thought it through before you speak? If you haven't learned how to speak, this reputed one is willing to train you for a few days. Take it as an additional reward for the cultivation method you've given me. Lei Dongtian was unprecedentedly enraged. When the other party said this, the confidence that was faintly revealed made the rage within him burn. He could no longer suppress it. Since he had said this, it meant that he knew the other party's background. However, just like what he had said, what could he do even if he knew the background? Who would believe such words even if they were to spread? They would only think that he had spoken incoherently and could not convey his meaning. Even if he were to announce this to the world, no one would believe him. Even if the few higher-ups of the Imperial Court of Yutong knew that it was true, they would not admit it and would even help Supreme Wind to deny it. Lei Dongtian had thought that he had grasped the other party's biggest secret and could make the other party refrain from taking action or even exchange some terms. However, after a round of verbal confrontation, he finally realized that the trump card that he thought was worthless and useless in the other party's eyes. Forget it, I'm too lazy to argue with a muddle-headed person. These two terms are good enough. Supreme Wind, who was outside the window, said faintly, first, the Lei family's arcane skill, second, the praxis of 7 emotions. As long as you hand them over quickly, the two women will return to your side tonight. What if I say no? Lei Dongtian's eyes were bloodshot. Not only was he angry, but his murderous intent was also brimming. This reputed one is pure and will not lay a finger on young Lord Lei's women. However, there are many people on our side who like beauties very much. Supreme Wind, who was outside the window, said faintly, by then, I'm afraid that the primordial Eon of chaos that young Lord Lei has been planning for such a long time will be lost. Even if you manage to save them in the end, it will be meaningless. Therefore, young Lord Lei must think twice about the gains and losses. Lei Dongtian felt like he had been struck by lightning. The other party even knew the secret of the primordial Eon of chaos. I've really underestimated your foundation. Lei Dongtian said darkly. However, Lord Supreme Wind, aren't you being too certain and arrogant? I've been talking to you for such a long time. Is it really just a negotiation? Supreme Wind, who was by the window, was stunned for a moment. He then said faintly, could it be that young Lord Lei still has a trick to confine the space between heaven and earth? I don't need to confine the space between heaven and earth to deal with you. I only need to do a little trick. Before his words echoed in the air, Lei Dongtian had already flown out like a bolt of lightning. In an instant, the strong wind howled and green smoke rose. A cloud of greenish-black air had enveloped the entire sky above the inn. The sound of the wind could be heard as the blurry silhouette by the window turned into a gust of wind. A voice filled with confidence echoed, young Lord Lei, you'll be obedient. What is this? In the sky, the movement of the wind that had been scattered suddenly became unusually chaotic. No matter how the wind in the sky dispersed, there was still a layer of faint fluorescence flickering on the shadow of the gust. Lei Dongtian let out a long howl and flew out with his sword. This is the little toy I've left on you to thank you for giving me such a long time just now. It's not a shame that you've fallen into my trap. Stay here. As his voice rang out, the sword moved. The sword light was like a dragon as it whizzed out. A strong gust of wind rose abruptly and soared upwards. So what if you've done something to it? Do you think you can still catch up to me? How arrogant. Amidst the howling of the wind, it had already risen into the sky in the blink of an eye, speeding away. Lei Dongtian fell back to the ground after missing his attack. Arrogant? Let's see who's the arrogant one. Are you ready? The last sentence was directed at Old Mu, who was beside him. I'm ready, Old Mu replied solemnly. Go after it. The effect of that thing can only last for 2 hours. If we can't find it within 2 hours, it'll disappear automatically and all our efforts will be in vain. Both of them did not delay as they turned into a ray of black light and dashed out of the inn simultaneously. At this moment, there were still many wind shadows scattered in all directions in the sky, but they disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Lei Dongtian's movement was extremely fast. He was like a ray of flowing light, like a white steed flitting across a crevice. This was enough to prove that he had actually held back a lot of his strength in the short fight with Supreme Wind just now. Lei Dongtian was also a person with deep foresight, having a deep understanding of the current situation. There was no meaning in simply capturing Supreme Wind. Even if he were to kill him, it would only be detrimental to the current situation and would not help at all. This was because the most crucial issue now was the safety of Ji Lingxi and Yu Rolan. Chapter 336. Lei Dongtian had already made up his mind. As long as he had the 2 ladies in his hands, he could plan and arrange the follow-up actions in a leisurely manner. Or he could simply go back and use his family's power to come to Tianxian continent and uproot the Four Seasons Tower. On the other side, Old Mu had completely hidden himself in the night, deliberately paying attention to the blurry traces in the sky as he sprinted. The wind in the sky circled around Tiantang City twice, gathering and dispersing at times. As time passed, Lei Dongtian and Old Mu became more and more anxious. Seeing that more than half of the time limit had passed, the other party still refused to let his guard down. Supreme Wind was too cunning and cautious. To think that he would rather waste his own cultivation than to stop. He probably knew very well that once he stopped, he would be locked onto by Lei Dongtian and fall into an extreme pursuit. Seeing that it was disadvantageous for him to continue the stalemate, Lei Dongtian made another move. He unsheathed his sword and attacked. Soaring in the air, his sword soared into the sky. The majestic sword current immediately shattered the blurry shadows in the air. As he moved, Old Mu did the same thing. Swoosh, 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 the sword light danced like electric snakes, flashing continuously in the air. Both of them were the pinnacle of Tianxian continent's powerhouses. As they exerted their full strength, the whole of Tiantang City was shocked into silence. Since when did Tiantang City have these two superb experts? This was a battle of sword energy that was thousands of feet high in the sky. This was simply a dream battle that ordinary people couldn't even imagine. With the cultivation base of Venerable Lord Saber and Venerable Lord Snow, they were naturally alarmed at the first instance. Both of them stood at the top of the tower, looking at the crisscrossing sword light in the sky. Both of them felt a chill run down their spines. Experts. They are actually pinnacle experts. Venerable Lord Snow sucked in a breath of cold air. Venerable Lord Saber's face was pale. Second brother, if you were to face these two people, how confident are you? Venerable Lord Snow chuckled bitterly. I have 100% confidence to escape. Venerable Lord Saber's face twitched. Confidence to escape? Does that not mean that I can't beat them head-on? Venerable Lord Saber did not dare to ask this directly. He only prayed in his heart that these two people would not be the Four Seasons Tower's enemies. Otherwise, if they were to fight, second brother would be able to escape unscathed, but he was destined to perish here. Who is he fighting with? Isn't this battle too sudden? Venerable Lord Saber was getting more and more frightened as he watched. There are many capable people and experts in this world. Just because you don't know them doesn't mean they don't exist. Venerable Lord Snow sighed. Could it be Supreme Wind? Venerable Lord Saber had a sudden thought. Venerable Lord Snow looked at his fifth brother mockingly and said faintly, Lao Wu, you think too much. If Supreme Wind had the ability to fight both of them at the same time, his cultivation base would at least be on par with Ling Xiaozui's. He would have long gone to the Four Seasons Tower's headquarters. Venerable Lord Saber was embarrassed. You should hurry up and focus on watching the battle. Look carefully. The person who is fighting with the two of them is obviously not using his full strength. His whole body has turned into a ball of hazy light spots. This kind of magical technique is really unheard of. The man in white, Venerable Lord Snow, sighed and said, It's a pity that we can't watch the battle of such experts from a close distance. Otherwise, it would be greatly beneficial. Venerable Lord Saber agreed wholeheartedly. The man in white, Venerable Lord Snow, frowned and pondered, racking his brains. Who were these three people in front of him? How could they possess such earth-shattering power? It was already strange to have such an ability. What was even stranger was that in his impression, there was no such pinnacle of heaven mystic experts that matched this. This was really strange, even more strange. Could it be that there were pinnacle experts in the martial world that he did not know? Right at this moment, a sudden roar resounded in the sky, shaking the whole of Tiantang City. The ball of light spots suddenly scattered, a relatively intact ball falling abruptly. The two beams of sword light that had the upper hand did not want to let it go. They followed closely behind, like two flood dragons, shaking their heads and wagging their tails as they swooped down swiftly and violently. Both sides, one fleeing and the other chasing, were extremely fast to the extreme. Their eyes had just caught a glimpse of it, but it was almost right in front of them. Then, the ball of light suddenly disappeared without a trace, leaving only a panicked voice, Lord Venerable Lord Saber. Before Venerable Lord Saber and his servant could react to the meaning of the sentence, they could only feel a gust of wind sweeping past their heads. Two beams of sword light were coming towards them, coming at them at an incredible speed, without the slightest hesitation just because they were in front of them. Of course, Lei Dongtian and his servant would not have the slightest hesitation, because both of them had clearly heard the words, Lord Venerable Lord Saber, recalling the pinnacle experts of the Four Seasons Tower that Yun Yang had mentioned, saber, sword, snow, frost, and ice. How could they not understand that among the two people in front of them, one of them must be Venerable Lord Saber of the Four Seasons Tower? At this moment, both of them had the urge to burst into tears. After all this hard work, they were almost exhausted to death. Finally, the clouds parted and the moon shone brightly. They had found their base camp. At least, they had found someone who could fight them head-on. This was already too difficult for them. Lei Dongtian was even a little complacent at this moment. If it were not for his sudden whim of using his sword energy to continuously injure Supreme Wind, he might have been able to endure until the time limit of 2 hours had passed. The arrogant one would have been him. How fortunate! How fortunate that he had forced him to give up. Venerable Lord Saber called out instinctively, "Who is it?" Facing the oncoming sword that was like a raging dragon, not only Venerable Lord Saber, but even Venerable Lord Snow could only circulate his cultivation to resist it. Otherwise, the other party had no signs of stopping, yet he had been beheaded in such an inexplicable manner. No matter what, he had to fight back. Venerable Lord Saber roared and struck with his saber. Venerable Lord Snow waved his sleeves and a ball of snowflake-like silver light filled the space in front of him. He retreated hastily and cried out, "Which friend is it? This is a misunderstanding. Please hold your thunder for a moment, we will explain ourselves." Lei Dongtian could only feel a sudden chill in front of him as his entire body felt like it was about to be frozen. Both he and Old Mu had exhausted too much of their energy previously. The sword was thousands of feet high in the air, continuously slashing and attacking with hundreds of swords. That was a genuine extreme consumption. His cultivation base was exhausted and he was like a lamp that had run out of oil. Lei Dongtian's wish had been fulfilled. He quickly took out a few medicinal pills and threw them into his mouth. His cheeks were bulging as he swallowed them with great effort. He did not even have the time to maintain his image, let alone speak. It was the same situation on Old Mu's side. His cultivation base was slightly higher than his young lord's, but only by a little. In addition, the cultivation method that he was cultivating was definitely inferior to Lei Dongtian's in terms of effectiveness. While Lei Dongtian was struggling to hold on, Old Mu was in a similar situation. However, his situation was even worse because his storage ring had been given to Yun Yang. He was hurriedly taking out medicinal pills from his robe with one hand, but before he could do so, Venerable Lord Saber's saber had already arrived in front of him. The saber's wind was sharp and deadly. Old Mu was enraged. Holding his sword with one hand, he slashed down with all his remaining strength. At this moment, Old Mu was truly enraged. He had almost exhausted all the remaining spiritual energy in his body. The edge of his sword was suddenly surrounded by a brilliance that was similar to a burning black flame. Clang! Venerable Lord Saber let out a loud cry and spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. His body rolled out like a rubber ball. This was the roof of the tower to Heaven Inn. Venerable Lord Saber had rolled to the outermost edge of the roof. His head hit the protective low wall with a loud thud. For a moment, he felt dizzy, but he bounced back again. With a loud crack, a large piece of the low wall was broken and fell down with a loud thud. Along the way, it was unknown what it had hit. A voice filled with shock and anger rang out from an unknown floor. It was filled with uncontrollable rage. F***ck your mother. F***ck, what kind of bastard is this? He's courting death. At this moment, Lei Dongtian, who had caught his breath, once again struck out with his sword like lightning, engaging in a battle with Venerable Lord Snow. Venerable Lord Saber was slashed by Old Mu's sword, rolling on the ground like a gourd. When he finally stood up, he could still see stars in front of him, swaying here and there. It was as if there were 17 or 18 people fighting at the same time, each of them having a halo above their heads. He shook his head hard, trying to regain his clarity. However, he suddenly saw the black-clothed guy rushing towards him again. Venerable Lord Saber snorted. He could not care less about the fact that his mind had yet to fully recover. He leaped up and disappeared with a loud clang. A sharp saber appeared in the air and slashed down fiercely. Old Mu had already swallowed the medicinal pills, but the interval was too short. He had not even recovered a breath of vitality. He was in an awkward situation where his old strength had been exhausted and new strength had yet to be generated. For a moment, he could only dodge the continuous saber strikes of Venerable Lord Saber, feeling that his lungs were about to explode. With his cultivation base, he could not believe that he had been forced into such a state by such an ant. It was an extreme shame that could never be washed away. Lei Dongtian's sword light was like a colorful falling flower, circling around Venerable Lord Snow as he attacked with his sword. The medicinal pills had begun to take effect in his dantian. As his vitality gradually recovered, he gradually gained the upper hand. His attacks were like waves. Venerable Lord Snow's snowflake blades danced in the air, trying his best to parry the attacks. He instinctively thought that this matter was just a misunderstanding. With the opponent's strength, if he were to offend him, there would be no end of trouble. Therefore, even though he could see that Lei Dongtian was exhausted and was barely holding on, Venerable Lord Snow still did not take the opportunity to attack. He was only limited to defending and explaining, "It's a misunderstanding. Sir, this is really a misunderstanding. We're not enemies. It's a misunderstanding. We've been framed, we're just here to enjoy the scenery. It's a misunderstanding. It's my birthday, I've grown another year older." Chapter 337. Lei Dongtian had a sudden thought. He retracted his sword and landed on the top of the building. He stood there gracefully, showing the demeanor of an expert. "Old Mu!" Lei Dongtian shouted. Old Mu hurriedly flew over. The saber light was still flickering in the air. Venerable Lord Saber's potential had been stimulated. Although his eyes were still a little dizzy, his combat instinct was still very good. The saber was flickering, chasing after Old Mu. One slash after another, there was no sign of letting up. His mind had been shaken by the previous fight. His heart was surrounded by layers of deadly crisis. The only thing he knew was that if he did not fight with all his might, he would definitely die. Under such circumstances, how could he not unleash 200% of his strength? He was really fighting with all his might. "Stop!" Venerable Lord Snow shouted. He took a step forward and was about to grab the saber in the air. However, the saber light shone brightly as it slashed towards Venerable Lord Snow's face. Venerable Lord Snow was furious. He grabbed the shiny saber in the air and shouted angrily, "Are you crazy?" This sound was truly like a thunderclap, deafening to the ears. Venerable Lord Saber could only feel his muddled mind clearing up. He and the saber had finally separated, but he had also lost his remaining strength and fell from the air. Venerable Lord Snow caught him. On the opposite side, Lei Dongtian and Old Mu were panting at the same time. The medicinal pills in their bodies could be activated by their own cultivation power, like a wildfire that started a prairie fire, causing the almost dried-up dantian to produce new strength rapidly and endlessly. Misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. This is a huge misunderstanding. Venerable Lord Snow did not know whether to laugh or cry. Once again, he spoke very seriously. Lei Dongtian snorted in his heart and said faintly, "Are you the famous Venerable Lord Saber and Venerable Lord Snow of the Four Seasons Tower?" Venerable Lord Snow replied, "Yes, it is me." "May I ask who you are?" Lei Dongtian asked, "You don't recognize me?" Venerable Lord Snow was stunned, "Do I know you?" Lei Dongtian said, "You don't recognize me? You actually say that you don't know me?" Venerable Lord Snow felt that the person in front of him was a psychopath. He said, "I am a little blind. May I ask who you are?" The smile on Lei Dongtian's face became even weirder. With a bone-chilling coldness, he said, "Blind? I don't think you have bad eyesight. Are you blind?" Even if Venerable Lord Snow was a clay figurine, he would still have some manners. He had shown his kindness time and time again, yet the other party was still so rude. It should be known that he was a peerless expert in the martial arts world. Venerable Lord Snow's face darkened as he said faintly, "I don't understand what you mean by this. Can I understand that this is a provocation to this tower?" Lei Dongtian heaved a long sigh. He felt that his cultivation base had recovered by 60%. He was relieved and said in a low voice, "Snowflake blades, flying all over the sky. You are Venerable Lord Snow, I recognize you. Over there, there's a saber in the sky, Venerable Lord Saber." Not bad, right? You've already asked this question once. The person in front of them had a peerless cultivation, but why did his mind seem to be lacking? What was even more ridiculous was that two peerless experts had both lost their minds at the same time. What a joke of fate. Venerable Lord Snow had a strange feeling in his heart. He asked in a gentle voice, "May I ask who you are?" Lei Dongtian guffawed and said, "I'm your father." Venerable Lord Snow could only feel a gush of anger rushing up to him. This time, Venerable Lord Snow was truly enraged. However, due to the other party's tyrannical cultivation, he forcefully suppressed his anger and said, "There is no need for you to be so overbearing. It is beneath your status. I have repeatedly explained that this incident is just a misunderstanding, or perhaps it is a trap set up by someone with ulterior motives." Misunderstanding? A trap? Lei Dongtian snorted. "You're from the Four Seasons Tower, aren't you? You're Venerable Lord Snow, aren't you? He's Venerable Lord Saber, isn't he? There's nothing wrong with this, is there?" Venerable Lord Snow had an ominous feeling in his heart. "Yes, you have a good eye. We're two of the Four Seasons Tower's 5 venerable lords." Lei Dongtian rolled his eyes and said in a strange tone, "It's so late at night, and it's already the latter half of the night. Instead of sleeping in your rooms, you guys purposely came to the rooftop to enjoy the cool air in this freezing cold weather? Are you here to enjoy the cool air? Or are you here to enjoy the cool air? Or are you King here to enjoy the cool air?" Venerable Lord Snow said in a low voice, "We brothers have just come to Tiantang City. We just wanted to admire the night view of Tiantang City, that's all. It's an unexpected turn of events today. It's truly a coincidence that we're here at the right time." Lei Dongtian's expression suddenly darkened. King nonsense. Enjoy the night view? Could it be that the two of you are two fucking poets? Look at how romantic you are. Why don't you say that you've recited poems? Wouldn't that be more realistic and vivid? Do you have any impromptu works? Come, recite one for your father to enjoy." Venerable Lord Snow's expression also darkened completely. "Why are you so stubborn and overbearing? What's the reason for this? Pretentious." Lei Dongtian squinted at him. "Continue your King pretentious act. Pretend to the end if you can." Venerable Lord Snow took a deep breath. He had finally confirmed one thing. This person in front of him was stubborn and would not listen to any good advice. No matter what was said to him, be it good words or threats, he would not take it seriously. He only regarded himself as an irreconcilable enemy. However, this knowledge made Venerable Lord Snow feel disgusted as if he had just been ked. "You're a King Pinnacle expert, aren't you? How can you find trouble with us without asking for the right and wrong? Are we, the Four Seasons Tower, so easy to bully? Are you sure you want to see the truth? Although your strength is outstanding, we, the Four Seasons Tower, are not to be trifled with." Venerable Lord Snow calmed himself down and mobilized his mystical chi with all his might. Even though he knew it was futile, he still wanted to try to avoid being the enemy of the expert in front of him. "Are you still trying to be mysterious?" Lei Dongtian felt that he had almost recovered. He pulled a long face and said ferociously, "Tell me, where is the person?" Venerable Lord Snow was startled. "Who is it?" Lei Dongtian was enraged to the point where he could no longer control himself. He howled towards the sky, like a thunderclap, "Where is my person? How long are you going to pretend?" Venerable Lord Snow said with a sullen face, "Please speak clearly so that we don't get dirty." CKU. You're the dirtiest. Lei Dongtian did not allow any explanation and rushed forward. Lei Dongtian attacked for the second time. Not only was his aura stronger, but his attack was also different. With a shake of his left hand, a cloud of black chi filled the air. The force of his palm that could split a mountain was unstoppable. With a shake of his right hand, a sword gleamed coldly like a poisonous dragon coming out of the water. Venerable Lord Snow did not dare to be careless when he saw the incoming attack. He spun his body quickly and countless snowflake blades clanged against Lei Dongtian's long sword. As he spun rapidly to avoid Lei Dongtian's strange palm, he finally decided to fight back. A punch that carried the sound of wind and thunder was a strong counterattack. Lei Dongtian had exhausted a lot of his energy earlier, so his attack was naturally weaker. Venerable Lord Snow could still maintain his defense and not attack, but now that Lei Dongtian's strength had increased tremendously, his attack had increased exponentially. If he did not fight back, it would be no different from seeking death. No matter how much Venerable Lord Snow wanted to explain the misunderstanding, it was better for him to fight back. Bang! Both of their fists and palms met head-on. There were no tricks or tricks. With a strong impact, Lei Dongtian's body swayed while Venerable Lord Snow took 3 steps back. However, under Lei Dongtian's rage, his speed was extremely fast. His entire person seemed to have turned into a whirlwind. As the sword gleamed, it was like a bright ball of light. His figure and face could no longer be seen. Venerable Lord Snow had already fallen into a disadvantageous position with only 3 moves. He still had scruples in his heart. Even when he fought back, he still did not go all out. He was always wondering where the misunderstanding had occurred. Although the other party's words were unpleasant to hear, if this misunderstanding could not be resolved, it would be even more fatal. If he could resolve this misunderstanding, it would be best to do so. His cultivation base was not as good as Venerable Lord Snow's, and he had scruples in his heart. Under the combination of the two, it did not take long for him to fall into a bad situation of being beaten up. Lei Dongtian's anger soared to the sky. His aura was like a rainbow. Moreover, he was bullying the weak. Naturally, the more he fought, the easier it was. Old Mu watched from the side as his young master had gained the upper hand. There was no need for him to step forward to help. His target naturally fell onto Venerable Lord Saber. Old Mu had never forgotten the humiliation of being suppressed by Venerable Lord Saber, the ant. Now that there was an opportunity, how could he miss it? Venerable Lord Saber was still in a daze. He could only feel that his body was almost hollowed out. His head was buzzing, his heart was beating rapidly, and his vision was blacking out. In short, everything was not right. Even when Old Mu was right in front of him, he still did not know. He did not react at all, let alone deal with it. Slap. Old Mu slapped Venerable Lord Saber's face and asked, "Where is he?" Venerable Lord Saber was ambushed and instinctively stood up with a roar. However, he was immediately slapped in the face, even more ruthless than the previous one, causing him to fall to the ground. "Where is he?" Venerable Lord Saber had finally regained consciousness. However, he had never suffered such humiliation in his life. For a moment, even his chest was about to explode. "Old dog. Kill me if you have the guts. Do you think that I won't dare to kill you? It's not that easy even if you want to die." Old Mu sneered, "Speak quickly. Only then will I give you a quick death." Venerable Lord Saber sneered, "I can't beat you, but don't even think about getting anything from me." Old Mu was furious. He slammed his palm on Venerable Lord Saber's chest and grinned, "I'd like to see how tough your mouth can be and how long it can last. Let's see if you'll speak when the time comes." With a thought, he spat out his energy. On the other side, Venerable Lord Snow cried out, "Stop." He was about to rush over to help. "Stop." Lei Dongtian's body flashed and blocked Venerable Lord Snow's way. He sneered, "Do you think he listens to me or to you? Have you really turned into a fool by playing dumb?" Chapter 338. Lei Dongtian sneered and nodded, "Everything in this world is just a misunderstanding. You two poets should be the ones who understand this the most. After all, you are so romantic, admiring the night view in the snow in the middle of the night. Pretending to be an idiot, you think I am an idiot?" Blood gushed out of Venerable Lord Saber's mouth. He was on the brink of death. Venerable Lord Snow had no time to argue and shouted, "Get out of the way." Before his voice echoed in the air, his entire body began to spin like a whirlwind. At the same time, the snowflakes that had fallen and began to accumulate on the ground flew up and filled the air. In an instant, the world was covered in snow and everything was white. Snow dance, I am the master. An indescribable atmosphere of power enveloped the entire roof of the tower to heaven in. Lei Dongtian and Old Moo's actual cultivation base was above Venerable Lord Snow's. However, at this moment, they could only feel an irresistible force surging towards them. They were forcefully pushed out of this area and could not do anything. In this unique space where snow and snow danced in the air, there was only one person who had the right to speak. Venerable Lord Snow. Without his permission, no one could set foot in this place. Even if one's cultivation base was higher than his, one would never be able to enter before his territory was removed. Territory. Lei Dongtian exclaimed, "The snow territory." A mere martial artist at the 8th heaven could actually comprehend the domain realm? How is this possible? His voice was filled with disbelief. Not only Lei Dongtian, Old Moo was equally shocked and in disbelief. Both of them looked at each other and saw the disbelief in each other's eyes. How was this possible? This was clearly a transcendent skill that only Dao realm cultivators could awaken. Moreover, not all Dao realm cultivators could comprehend it. One needed luck, opportunity, and good fortune to be able to comprehend it under the right circumstances. Some experts might not even be able to awaken the power of territory when they reached the 6th level of the Dao realm. However, Venerable Lord Snow of the Four Seasons Tower could actually unleash a territory when he was only in the level of the Heaven realm. Isn't this a ghost? Lei Dongtian rubbed his eyes, almost thinking that he had seen wrongly. Or perhaps Venerable Lord Snow had just performed some kind of special arcane skill that caused his judgment to be wrong. However, what he saw in front of him was clearly the strange scene of the territory. It was definitely not fake. Saber. Venerable Lord Snow's body was trembling, his face slowly turning pale. How are you feeling? Venerable Lord Saber tried his best to support his body, blood oozing out from the corner of his mouth. Second brother. I'm afraid I can't make it. Venerable Lord Snow trembled and hurriedly went forward to check. With a glance, he saw that a part of Venerable Lord Saber's chest had caved in. It was a fatal wound, and he could not help but stare with rage. That man's first strike had already injured my internal organs. Later on, I performed the art of soul ignition to counterattack. However, I overdid it and consumed a lot of my spirit, causing my mind to be clouded. Venerable Lord Saber smiled bitterly. Just now, the man in black used his palm strength to strike my chest. Now that I've regained my consciousness, it's just the final radiance of the setting sun. I won't live long, second brother. Even if I can live on, I am destined to be a cripple. I don't have much time left. Venerable Lord Snow howled into the sky, his voice filled with intense indignation. Why did he hold back just now? Why did he not go all out when the other party was exhausted? Even if he could not kill the other party, he could at least escape unscathed. Why did he have to be overcautious? He had held back many times, but the other party did not appreciate it. Instead, he had killed his own people after he had gotten some breathing room, even causing his fifth brother to be on the brink of death. All of these were caused by his own inaction. However, at this moment, no matter how much he regretted it, it was too late. It was futile. Outside, the whistling sound of sword energy was heard once again. Two beams of sword light rose up and fell in a crisscross pattern. They rushed towards the territory of snow. Once the territory of snow was formed, one man would be able to hold the pass against 10,000 enemies. Even if the cultivation base of the opponent was higher than the one who cast the territory, due to the difference in spiritual chi properties, the opponent would still be isolated. It was difficult to comprehend the power of the territory of snow. It was equally difficult to break it, unless it was a cultivator whose cultivation base was 3 levels higher than the one who cast the territory. Only then could it be destroyed by brute force. This destruction was to destroy the territory along with the person who cast the territory. Apart from that, there was no other way. As long as the territory was not destroyed, the owner would not die. Lei Dongtian's cultivation base was more than a level higher than Venerable Lord Snow's, but it was still far from reaching the height of 3 levels. However, there was no turning back for both parties, especially when he knew that Venerable Lord Snow was a potential cultivator who possessed the territory of snow. His intention to kill was even stronger. He used the brute force from the outside world as a medium to wear down the territory of snow bit by bit. This was the most primitive and stupid way to deal with the territory of snow. To maintain the territory of snow, it would consume one's cultivation base. As long as there was enough impact, when the territory of snow's cultivation base was exhausted, the territory would naturally disappear. According to Lei Dongtian's knowledge, those who possessed the territory of snow had to at least have the cultivation base of the Tao realm. A cultivator of the Tao realm could maintain his territory of snow for a long time. Using such a primitive way to attack was like trying to put out a burning cart of firewood with a cup of water. However, Venerable Lord Snow was only of the 8th heaven. Even if he had the territory of snow, the time he could maintain it would be limited. Lei Dongtian and Old Mu's joint attack still had a great chance to wear down and destroy the territory of snow. The sword light was like a rainbow, constantly attacking the territory of snow. The rumbling sound was like a thunderclap, shaking the entire Tiantang city. As the direct target, the tower to heaven and gradually could not hold on and was on the verge of collapse. Venerable Lord Snow was trembling, his face turning paler and paler. It was obvious that the method of Lei Dongtian and his servant was gradually working. However, he was still holding on. He dared not withdraw it. This was because his brother was in it. Venerable Lord Saber was panting. Suddenly, he opened his eyes. There was a clear look in his eyes as he said softly, "Second brother, I am content in this life." Venerable Lord Snow was shocked. Venerable Lord Saber's eyes were warm. "My cultivation base has always been the weakest among us brothers. Usually, when the 4 of you see me, you either beat or scold me. Therefore, I don't want to see all of you. Second brother, you've beaten, scolded, and ridiculed me the most. Therefore, I don't usually stay there. I'd rather roam the martial world and wander around, but today, I am truly content." That 5th brother made me feel even more warm. Venerable Lord Saber squinted his eyes and said, "Second brother, I'm sorry for dragging everyone down. I will never forget that second brother risked your life to protect me today." Venerable Lord Snow gritted his teeth, enduring the impact of the external world. He said, "What nonsense are you talking about? Quickly dissolve the medicinal effect and ease the injury. As long as your heart meridians resume their circulation, I will bring you to break through. At such a critical moment, you're still not doing the right thing. What are you lamenting about? You'll have the time to lament when we're safe." Venerable Lord Saber had a warm look on his face as he said softly, "Second brother, I don't know where these 2 people came from. I don't know why they're targeting us like this. And that Venerable Lord Saber, I think we must have been tricked. In Tiantang City, there's only one person who has the qualification, the guts, and the ability to trick us, Supreme Wind of the 9 Supremes. The cultivation base of these 2 people is exceptionally strong. Even if they can't compare to our boss, they're still at the pinnacle of this world. Second brother, if you were to escape with me, there'll only be one outcome for both of us, to be caught up and killed by them. Right now, the best case scenario is for one of us brothers to survive. I can't make it anyway. Let's not hesitate anymore." Venerable Lord Saber smiled and said, "Second brother, please bid farewell to eldest brother, 3rd brother, and 4th brother on my behalf. I'm sorry to 4th brother for not being able to protect his son. I'm sorry to him." The rumbling outside was earth-shattering. The snow territory was becoming more and more precarious, as if it could collapse at any time. However, Venerable Lord Snow seemed to be unable to hear anything at this moment. His face was pale, his gaze was fixed on Venerable Lord Saber's face. "Second brother, you have to be prepared to bring my head back. Just bury it in my favorite place." Venerable Lord Saber's face slowly turned rosy, his eyes were glowing. "No." Venerable Lord Snow let out a heart-wrenching roar, intending to stop Venerable Lord Saber's actions. However, it was too late. Venerable Lord Saber's entire body began to glow. The gleam in his eyes grew brighter and colder. The glaring gleam was like a treasured saber that was half unsheathed. The chilling gleam shone upon the world. "Also, remember to bring my saber back. It's the witness of my existence in this world," Venerable Lord Saber said faintly. His words at this moment were filled with an atmosphere of power. At the next moment, his chest that had already caved in bulged up again, no different from an ordinary person. At this moment, Venerable Lord Saber was full of vigor, as if he had recovered to his peak state. His body slowly floated up from the ground. With a flip, he landed on the snowy ground. Venerable Lord Saber, who was dressed in black, stood on the snowy ground. His face was filled with indifference, as if all the emotions in the world had nothing to do with him anymore. "Remove the snow territory," Venerable Lord Saber said faintly, or perhaps it was an order. His eyes were looking at the crisscrossing sword light outside. His pupils were already completely black. There was no longer any difference between his eyeballs and the whites of his eyes. "Second brother risked his life to protect me. I have no regrets in this life. With my remaining life, I will send second brother home safely." Venerable Lord Saber's voice grew increasingly indifferent. At this moment, he was like a high and mighty god. In his voice, there was no longer the slightest human emotion. "Xiaowu!" Venerable Lord Snow roared, hot tears flowing from his eyes. The next moment, the snow territory was suddenly broken. With a swoosh, countless snowflakes tumbled into the sky. Upon seeing this, Lei Dongtian and Old Mu were overjoyed and rushed over at the same time. However, a dark shadow quietly appeared in front of them, as if it had materialized out of thin air. His entire body was filled with crisscrossing saber energy. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.